Chapter 529. A few days passed quickly, but these days, Watergate didn't just stay in his office to deal with the documents that have been left on his desk because of his departure. Watergate took out some very important documents from them, and after signing them, Watergate left and issued a summon order to the elders of Kiba and some powerful ninjas. In the past few days, although Watergate has been reviewing documents, he was also waiting for the ninjas who received his summon order to return to Woodleaf Village. War was never something that could be done easily. It involved extremely complicated procedures. The allocation of personnel and the allocation of money were only the most superficial things. When war broke out, it represented a wave of reshuffling of power. If one could obtain enough merits or seize an important position in the war, then one's status and reputation would rise rapidly. From a distance, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru won the title of Sannin in the Second Shinobi World War against the Rain Village's demigod Hanzo the Salamander, and since then, they have been famous in the Shinobi World War. It can be seen that Watergate's Nangongja showed his strength in the Third Shinobi World War and was crowned with the titles Woodleaf's Golden Flash and Woodleaf's Yama. Even if Nangongja, who deliberately lived in seclusion for many years, was still able to shock others after his identity was exposed in this 5 Kage tournament. So in fact, Watergate is also thinking about how to distribute such a huge benefit. Although Watergate also has a direct force that is close to him, after all, such a direct force is actually not that powerful. The dividends that can be brought by a war are not something that his direct forces can eat. Since the cake brought by the war dividend can't be eaten, naturally, there is a problem of division. During this time, Watergate only used about 30 to 40% of his mind to deal with government affairs, and more of it was thinking about how to balance the forces in Woodleaf Village through the division of benefits. Everyone, thank you for putting down your affairs after receiving my order and returning to the ninja village to participate in this meeting. Watergate sat on his seat on the high platform, looking at more than a dozen representatives of the elders of Kiba sitting in front of him. There were already dozens of Woodleaf ninjas who can be called the mainstay. Watergate slowly said. In front of Watergate, Mito Manitis, Zhuan Shaochun, and some other elders of Kiba's eyes flashed with passion after hearing Watergate's words. As the Woodleaf elders, they were actually the representatives of the family forces in the Woodleaf. Many of the Woodleaf elders were former heads of Woodleaf clans. As the local tyrants of the Woodleaf clans, they naturally obtained some interesting information from their own channels. The war is coming. Most of the Woodleaf ninjas standing behind are veteran ninjas who have experienced the Third Shinobi World War. After receiving the order to complete the task as soon as possible, or even to give up the task and return to the ninja village if the task can't be completed in a short time, it naturally made them feel like a storm is coming. Everyone is standing in front of the Woodleaf clans to protect the Woodleaf clans, so I won't say too many empty words with you. What I want to inform you is the result of this 5 Kage conference's discussion, that is, a war that will sweep the entire shinobi world is about to happen. After hearing Watergate's words, although a few of the ninjas who have not experienced the war exclaimed, most of them were silent. Only those who have experienced the war can really understand how terrible and disgusting war is. Kakashi and Guy, who were also standing in the group of Jonin, also looked at each other at this moment. Even Mike Guy, who has always been hot-blooded, had a sad look in his eyes at this moment. Kakashi and Guy both lost people who were very important to them because of the war. Is the war going to start again? And it's going to sweep the entire shinobi world? Kakashi was very keen to find the most important key words from Watergate's words. From the First Shinobi World War a long time ago to the Third Shinobi World War that just passed a few years ago, the most large-scale battle was the battle between at most 4 large shinobi villages. But now Watergate said that the scope of the war is the entire shinobi world, so it includes the 5 major countries together with other small countries. Just the previous war has made many people experience unbearable grief, so how terrible will such a war that sweeps across the shinobi world be? War, unlike Kakashi, at this moment, Guy was still immersed in the impact of the upcoming war. His father, his teammates, and more Woodleaf shinobi who used to fight side by side with him left him one by one. Guy himself is not afraid of death, but he is a little worried about his 3 disciples. Li and Tian have become chunin, and Niji has become a jonin because of his outstanding talent. If the war really breaks out, then his disciples will definitely go to the battlefield. The pain of losing people close to him, Guy has experienced it, and he doesn't want to continue to experience it. Although the Woodleaf Elder and Woodleaf Shinobi in front of him have different reactions, Watergate didn't care about such different actions. That was because there was no possibility of this war ending without a cause. This war will sweep across the shinobi world, and the 2 sides will be Amigakure and Akatsuki against all the other countries including the 5 major countries. 1 shinobi village, 1 organization directly against the entire shinobi world. Such a matter was simply as inconceivable as a fairy tale. Even Hatake Kakashi, who had confronted Akatsuki several times in the past, had an incredulous expression on his face at this moment. Although the Akatsuki is very strong, Kakashi never thought that the Akatsuki could have the power of the entire shinobi world. But Watergate will never joke about such a thing. Did the Akatsuki really declare war on the entire shinobi world? What a crazy thing this is, but recalling all the information about the Akatsuki so far, it seems that such behavior is reasonable. Chapter 530. What kind of power is the Akatsuki organization? I believe most of the people present know a little bit about it. But what you know is only some superficial things. Presumably, many people don't understand why the Akatsuki organization can make the 5 great ninja villages in the ninja world so nervous, and even unite together. Looking at the ninja of Woodleaf Village in front of him, Watergate slowly said, and at the same time, he also signaled the row of masked Umbu standing beside him to take out the stack of information he had prepared in advance. Now, Umbu will release some information for everyone. After reading this information, I think everyone will have a clear understanding of the threat of the Akatsuki organization. Hearing Watergate's words, the Umbu ninja also acted one by one. There was not much information, only a few pages, and the elders of Kiba and Jonin present were only dozens of people. Soon, everyone present read the information in their hands, although there were only a few pages, but it was enough to shock anyone. After reading these words, whether it was the elders of Kiba or the surprised newcomers, at this moment, they fell into a long silence. The mysterious person who called himself Uchiha Madara? The Jubi who has a close relationship with the legendary ancestor of the ninja world, the Sage of the 6 Paths? The Eye of the Moon project to project the Manjikyu Sharingan on the moon and pull the whole world into the Tsukuyumi world? After reading these pages of information, the most shocking thing was that the Akatsuki organization had accumulated nearly 2 years of revenue of Woodleaf Village or even more. No wonder a mere Akatsuki organization from the Rain Country. At this moment, even the 5 great ninja villages have to unite to fight against them. The Akatsuki organization's scheme is too big. When other people are just fighting for the interests of their village and their country, the Akatsuki organization has already put the whole world into their own action. If you want to say what kind of thing can make people grow continuously and reach the peak of the spirit of all things, then it may be a simple word: ambition. It is because of the ambition in the heart that a person can make great progress. Everyone who can stand out in the sea of people, almost all have ambition that ordinary people can't reach. This kind of ambition existed in the hearts of everyone present. Minato, who sat at the top, was naturally one of the most outstanding people. But even Watergate only put his ambition in the Woodleaf Village. Watergate's ambition is to say that he hopes that the Woodleaf Village can really become the #1 force in the ninja world. Because Watergate knows that there are many strong people in this world who are not worse than him or even far stronger than him. Not to mention far away, Nangongja, who was now semi-secluded in Konoha, was an existence that he wasn't sure he could defeat. It is precisely because of this understanding, Watergate has the ambition to be controlled. But in the Akatsuki organization, whether it is the members who have been eliminated or the existing members who are still in the ninja world, almost all of them are people who don't control their ambitions at all. For his ambition, Sasori can directly betray the ninja village and turn the Kazekage corpse of his ninja village into a puppet. For his ambition, Deidara can even give up his life to verify his ultimate art. As for the rest of the people, each one of them is also wantonly indulging the desire in their hearts. Once people lose their self-control, what is the difference between them and a beast? And at this moment, the Akatsuki organization is a terrifying beast that has completely lost the ability to control itself, and the 5 great shinobi villages have joined forces to eliminate this terrifying beast that is full of desire and controlled by its own ambition. I believe that after seeing this information, you have already understood that this war is inevitable, right? Looking at all the elders and ninjas in front of him who fell into silence, Watergate said with a dignified expression. Yes, this war has really come to an inevitable situation. Even if the 5 great ninja villages can tolerate the actions of the Akatsuki organization in the 5 Kages convention, will the Akatsuki organization give up? Since they can put forward such a plan to pull the whole world into the genjutsu space, naturally, they will not lack the preparation to turn such a plan into a reality. Against such an organization that can be said to be a threat to the whole world, no capable and responsible person will stand by and do nothing. Humph. In that case, let's fight. Sitting in his seat, Mito Monitis threw the information in his hand on the table in front of him and said with a cold tone. Mito Monitis has not always been a mouthpiece that communicates with the Woodleaf clan forces and the Hokage forces. In the past, Mito Monitis, Zhuan Xiaochun, Shimura Danzo, and 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei were all disciples of the second Hokage Senju Tobarama. If he didn't have enough temperament and talent, how could Mito Monitis become a disciple of the second Hokage? It is undeniable that indulging in politics over the years has indeed changed Mito Monitis's temperament, but no matter how much he has changed, just like Shimura Danzo who has been crowned as a Woodleaf rebel, as long as someone threatens the stability and safety of the Woodleaf clan, Mito Monitis will not hesitate to show his anger. Seeing Mito Monitis, who is already old but full of a towering momentum at the moment, the mentality of many ninjas who were still filled with sadness quietly changed. As a ninja, when they chose such a path, they already knew that life and death will be the norm in their lives from now on. Although sometimes they are affected by the emotions in their hearts, in fact, everyone is prepared to die on the battlefield. And this time is different from the past. In the past, they killed people to protect their own village, but at this moment, they are actually fighting to protect the future of the world. Such a battle with a somewhat noble color is actually a kind of glory for everyone who participates in it. Don't be afraid of war. Don't be afraid of war. One by one, the ninjas slowly said such low and firm words. Minato looked at the ninjas in front of him, and his eyes flashed with a trace of confidence. These resolute soldiers belong to him, they belong to Konoha's strength. Chapter 531. Such a mobilization meeting also took place in the other 4 villages of the 5 major villages. At this moment, the Kage of the shinobi village exerted his charm as the leader to the extreme. Almost all the ninjas in the 5 major villages were infected by such an atmosphere. Now, they're not fighting for their own interests, they're fighting for the future of the shinobi world. This kind of mood made everyone excited. However, there was a place that didn't have such a lively atmosphere. On the contrary, it was rather cold and gloomy. Konan was sitting in her room, staring at the window of her room with a slightly empty look in her eyes. Outside the window, it was raining. The rain country was such a country that even the gods couldn't help but weep. After Nagato's death, Konan received the news from Jiraiya. As a person who has experienced a lot of things, Konan naturally knew that Nagato's death was definitely not done by the people inside the Woodleaf. After all, as long as Nagato was alive, it was a kind of suppression on her, and the people inside the Woodleaf weren't so short-sighted. Konan also slowly set her eyes on the masked hoodlum, who had been looking very restless all this time. He called himself Uchiha Madara. He declared war on the entire shinobi world, and announced the Eye of the Moon project that was completely different from the previous plan. Now, Hoodlum has completely put himself in the position of the leader of the Akatsuki, and what made Conan even more surprised was that this transition of power was unusually smooth, with almost no waves. It seems that Hoodlum has already taken control of the Akatsuki in his own hands. Poor Conan and Nagato thought that the Akatsuki was still the original Akatsuki, but they didn't expect that Hoodlum had already unknowingly turned the Akatsuki into a sword in his hand. Moreover, to be able to sneak into the wood leaf and quietly take Nagato's life, in Conan's knowledge, only Hoodlum, who is proficient in space ninjutsu, and who can perfectly integrate himself into the environment, can do this. After learning the news of Nagato's death, Conan has been hiding in her room and didn't want to go out, and Hoodlum's actions didn't make Conan care so much. For Conan, the shinobi world and peace didn't matter that much. What Conan cared about was Yahiko and Nagato, her two companions who had gone through hardships with her. Now that the two most important people to her have left the world, Conan couldn't help but be confused. Until now. His eyes, which were originally a little numb, were now burning with a ball of fire. It was a fire that burned with hatred and sadness as fuel. The target of this flame was Hoodlum, the one who took Nagato's life in Conan's heart. On the other hand, Hoodlum and Ju were in a room. They seemed to be discussing something. "How is it, did you get it?" Hoodlum said slowly as he looked at extinction in front of him. Facing Hoodlum's question, Zu didn't display her talkative nature. Instead, she fished out a small bottle from her pocket. The bottle wasn't big, but it was hard to take one's eyes off what was inside. Because in such an ordinary bottle, there was a legendary eye that belonged to the Rikudo Sennin, the Rinnegan. Zetsu went to the Wood Leaf, and Hoodlum went to the 5 Kage tournament. This was the plan that the two had discussed before. Since Watergate was going to participate in the 5 Kage tournament, then the Rinnegan, which would make anyone jealous after seeing it, would definitely not be on his body. Therefore, there was a high probability that Watergate would put the Rinnegan in a safe place. Therefore, after Hoodlum and Zetsu discussed, they decided that one person would go to the Wood Leaf to get the Rinnegan, and the other person would go to the 5 Kage tournament to deter the 5 Kages. In comparison, Zetsu was more suitable for such an infiltration mission, and Hoodlum also hoped that he could take Sasuke to the 5 Kage tournament and force Sasuke to use his Manjikyu Sharingan beyond his limits, so that Sasuke could have Manjikyu Sharingan as the sharpest sword in his hand. When Sasuke was controlled by Danzo and was under the influence of Koto Amatsukami, Hoodlum had been watching, but because of the threat of Nangongja and Watergate, Hoodlum didn't dare to show his figure. Although Hoodlum was disappointed that there was no way to sharpen Sasuke into the sharpest sword in his hand, Sasuke was just a chess piece that Hoodlum arranged for a moment, so it didn't make Hoodlum feel that regretful. Hoodlum looked at the bottle in Zetsu's hand with only one Rinnegan in it. He looked at Zetsu and asked, "Why is there only one Rinnegan, where is the other Rinnegan?" Just like the Sharingan, only a pair of Rinnegan is the real sage's eyes with the power of the 6 paths Sennin. Why did Zetsu take out only one Rinnegan? Watergate is very vigilant, he didn't put the 2 eyes in the same place, I only found one eye. Zetsu looked at Hoodlum and said coldly. Obviously, Zetsu should be completely dominated by Black Zetsu at this moment. Hoodlum looked at Zetsu, and Zetsu looked at Hoodlum. The two didn't speak for a long time, as if there were thousands of thoughts in their hearts. But suddenly, the two of them stopped looking at each other. Zetsu glanced at the door of the room, then slowly walked to the wall and directly merged his body into the wall and disappeared. Hoodlum put the Rinnegan that Zetsu just handed to him in his arms. After adjusting his mood, Hoodlum looked at the door of the room he was in with a little indifference. Paper release, God's origami jutsu. Conan's cold voice sounded outside the room, and the door of the room was constantly making cutting sounds. In a moment, the steel door was directly cut into pieces. "Conan, what do you mean by this?" Hoodlum asked as he looked at Little Nan, who was controlling paper. Little Nan's body had turned into paper and was ready for battle. After hearing Hoodlum's question, Conan didn't explain much, but directly controlled Paper to attack Hoodlum. She didn't come here to seek an answer. She came here just to send the person who may have taken Nagato's life to Yellow Spring. It's that simple. Chapter 532. Looking at Conan, who was silently attacking him, Hoodlum's expression became more and more unsightly. In all fairness, Hoodlum didn't want to have a falling out with Conan. After all, most of the core members of Akatsuki had fallen. Now the core members of Akatsuki were only Ju, Conan, Kisame and Hoodlum himself. Conan herself, no matter if it was fighting ability or support ability, she was very outstanding. If possible, Conan could also help Hoodlum to complete his plan. However, looking at the current Xiao Nan, she was completely ignoring him. Her only thought was to kill him. Even if Hoodlum had a glib tongue, there was no room for him to use it, right? A trace of impatience flashed in Hoodlum's eyes as he watched Paper, who was under Conan's control, continuously attacking him. His hands were constantly forming hand seals, the chakra in his body flowed in a special way, and a ninjutsu was completed. Fire Release, Great Fireball Jutsu. There were many fire release ninjutsu widely spread in the ninja world, but only one fire release ninjutsu was frequently used by the Uchiha clan, and even slowly crowned as the signature fire release ninjutsu of the Uchiha clan. And this fire release ninjutsu was the Great Fireball Jutsu used by Hoodlum at this moment. Looking at Hoodlum's skillful use of the Great Fireball Jutsu, Conan's eyes flashed with a trace of dignity. Although her paper release ninjutsu had undergone a lot of modifications and had a certain degree of fire and water resistance, but looking at the power of Hoodlum's fire release ninjutsu, her paper release ninjutsu was still very easy to ignite. Paper Release, Infinite Paper Shuriken Jutsu. Conan's hands quickly formed hand seals, and a ninjutsu that was frequently used by Conan was directly released. In general battle, Infinite Paper Shuriken Jutsu was used to contain the enemy, and didn't have any particularly outstanding attack ability. But this time, the Paper Shuriken created by Infinite Paper Shuriken Jutsu floated in the air under Conan's control and quickly rotated. As the Paper Shuriken spun faster and faster, gusts of wind surrounded the Paper Shuriken. Seeing that the wind pressure had accumulated, Conan immediately controlled the Paper Shuriken to shoot towards Hoodlum. The huge burning fireball was surrounded by wind pressure, and under the continuous attack of the Paper Shuriken, it was soon fragmented into pieces. However, the Paper Shurikens didn't stop attacking. They continued to attack Hoodlum. Looking at the small space around him, Hoodlum knew that he couldn't display his full strength in such a place, so he directly used his space ninjutsu to escape into the void. "You want to fight me? Then come out." After saying that, Hoodlum completely disappeared. "Go outside?" "That's exactly what I wanted." Looking at the place where Hoodlum had disappeared, Conan's eyes flashed with an indescribable light. How could he come here unprepared to fight someone who is proficient in space ninjutsu? The advantages and disadvantages of Hoodlum's space ninjutsu have been engraved in Conan's heart. Before coming here, Conan was fully prepared. After opening the door, a pair of paper wings appeared on Conan's back. With a flap of the wings, Conan's figure floated in the air. At this moment, Hoodlum was standing at the top of a building in Amigakure. After discovering that Conan saw him, Hoodlum's figure disappeared again and then appeared in the next place. Obviously, Hoodlum was leading the way for Conan. When Conan saw Hoodlum deliberately moving towards the direction outside the village, her heart was slightly relaxed. After all, the current Amigakure can be said to be developed by her and Nagato together. If Conan destroyed the crystallization of her and Nagato's creation because of fighting, although Conan wouldn't be soft-hearted, she would still be slightly sad. Conan waved her white wings behind her and flew in the direction that Obito was leading her. Soon, Conan had already caught up with Hoodlum, who was deliberately slowing down. The two still didn't exchange any words and directly fought. The snow-white paper and the orange flame collided in the sky. Sometimes the flame swallowed the white paper and turned it into a pile of ashes, and sometimes the white paper extinguished the flame and turned it into a wisp of smoke. The battle between the two looked particularly fierce, but when Hoodlum wasn't paying attention, small scrolls secretly fell from Conan's body. After these scrolls touched the ground, they immediately merged into the ground and disappeared. At this moment, Hoodlum was too tired to deal with Conan's paper release ninjutsu, so he didn't seem to notice this small detail. "Tell me, did you kill Nagato?" Conan looked at Hoodlum standing opposite her and finally said the first sentence since the battle. Sure enough, it was because of Nagato? Facing Conan's question, Hoodlum was silent at this moment. Because Hoodlum felt that no matter what answer he gave, it wouldn't change Conan's mind to kill him. In that case, why should he explain to Conan? It would be a waste of his momentum, and it would be useless. Since the battle had already begun, there was naturally no reason to end it casually. Looking at Hoodlum, who was silent, but constantly launching ninjutsu in his hand, Conan slowly shook her head. Although she didn't answer, Conan didn't need Hoodlum's answer. "Hoodlum, or Uchiha Madara. I don't care who you are, but you deceived me and Nagato, that is an indisputable fact. So, I will kill you here." Conan's hand made a hand seal, which Hoodlum was very familiar with, because most of the seal scrolls were made after making such a hand seal, and then infusing chakra into it to unlock the seal. At this moment, after Conan made the hand seal, the chakra in her body constantly poured into the ground. Obviously, Hoodlum could perceive that there were many things underground that didn't exist in the ground. Die. Paper release, God's Origami Jutsu. The God's Origami Jutsu is a ninjutsu that can manipulate paper at will. Usually, Conan often manipulates white paper that has been processed to a certain extent, but in the ninja world, there is an extremely common paper ninjutsu, that is, explosive tag. Chapter 533. Hoodlum would usually use two methods to evade attacks. The first was to transfer his body into an alternate dimension, causing all attacks to miss. The second was to turn his body into a void, allowing all attacks to pass through his body. Conan has worked with Hoodlum for a long time. Although Hoodlum usually deliberately hides his ability, Conan still found his weakness through her own observation and information collected from various channels. Transferring his body into a different space, as long as Hoodlum can successfully do this, he will be in an almost invulnerable state. Although this ninjutsu is almost invulnerable, it has a fatal flaw. Hoodlum actually needs time to completely absorb his body into a different space. This time is just a blink of an eye for ordinary people, but it is a huge disadvantage for powerful ninjas. As for the second ability, the ability to turn one's body into a half-materialized, half-ethereal state didn't exist for a period of time. However, there was a strict time limit to turning one's body into an ethereal state. Conan does not know how long the specific time limit is, but according to Hoodlum's past records, this technique can only last for about 4 or 5 minutes. To counter Hoodlum's weakness, Conan has finally prepared a method that is highly likely to capture Hoodlum and even kill him. Under Shao Nan's control, explosive talismans, which had runes engraved on them, shot out from the ground. Normally, only a few explosive talismans would be used in a normal battle, but now, they were like an endless sea. One of the 7 swords of Kirigakure, the explosive sword, Flying Foam, was only added with an explosive tag on the back of the sword. During the battle, the explosion of the explosive tag could be controlled, and it became a famous sword in the ninja world. Now, there are more than hundreds of explosive tags in front of him. At this moment, the endless explosive talismans were like surging waves that carried tremendous power as they came crashing towards him. A sense of crisis quietly crept into Hoodlum's heart. He must leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he is involved in the explosion of these explosive tags, he will likely die. It was this sense of danger that prompted Hoodlum to activate his spatial ability. Circles of spatial ripples formed around Hoodlum's body. Seeing Hoodlum start to use his space transfer ninjutsu, Conan immediately transferred a large amount of chakra from her body to her legs. Under the stimulation of chakra, Conan's speed soared in a short time. With Xiaonan's improved physique, she was able to use body blink easily. She stood in front of Hoodlum, who was using space teleportation, and an explosive talisman flew into her hands. Trying to escape? In your dreams. Xiaonan stuck the explosive talisman on Hoodlum's mask while he was casting spatial transference. Hoodlum hesitated. A part of his body had entered the alternate dimension while another part of his body remained in the real world. This situation made Hoodlum's body slightly sluggish, and he was unable to nimbly dodge Xiaonan's explosive charm. The instant the explosive talisman came into contact with Hoodlum's mask, it exploded. Xiaonan's body instantly turned into pieces of white paper and disappeared. Paper clone jutsu? Hoodlum almost instantly recognized the method Xiaonan used to dodge the explosion, but at this moment, he didn't have the mind to care about Xiaonan. The explosive talisman itself was very powerful. If hit at close range, it would be the same as being hit by a C-grade or B-grade fire release ninjutsu. Although Hoodlum's mask was made of special materials, the upper half was still blown to pieces. Due to the powerful impact of the explosive talisman's explosion, a part of Hoodlum's body that had entered the alternate dimension was directly dragged out. Xiaonan didn't give Hoodlum the slightest chance to react. She directly detonated the endless sea of explosive talismans. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, a large number of explosive talismans had started to explode one after another. The powerful shockwave of the explosion and the power generated from the explosion almost made the drizzling rain of the country of Rain disappear without a trace. Looking at Hoodlum, who was completely caught in the explosion range, Xiaonan's eyes were slightly emotional. Is everything finally coming to an end? After killing Hoodlum, whether it's the Akatsuki or the dream of bringing peace to the ninja world, it will be submerged in the long river of history. Since Hoodlum has declared war on the 5 major countries, the 5 major countries won't easily let go of the Rain country and Akatsuki. I only hope that the 5 major countries can change in this war, and don't hurt the innocent lives. 600 billion explosive talismans, this was the last resort of the Akatsuki after Conan spent almost all of their savings. These explosive talismans were originally used by Nagato as a last resort to perish together with a strong enemy, but now they were used by her to deal with Hoodlum. As time passed, the explosion became more and more violent, but no matter how many explosive talismans there were, they would eventually run out. With the disappearance of the last explosion, the powerful explosion that shook the earth finally came to an end. Looking at the scorched earth that had sunk nearly 2 inches due to the explosion, Xiaonan's eyes were full of complex emotions, and she didn't speak for a long time. Even if it was Hoodlum, in such an explosion, wouldn't even have his bones left? Conan slowly untied the black Akatsuki's uniform with red clouds on it, then casually threw her uniform on the charred ground. Akatsuki was still not her home. Along with the Akatsuki's uniform slowly falling down, Conan nevertheless felt a kind of ice-cold sensation suddenly coming from her abdomen, and a kind of blazing sensation was emitted from the place where the ice-cold sensation came from. Am I being attacked? Lowering her head, Xiaonan looked at her abdomen, and saw the tip of a kunai directly extending from her abdomen. It's really dangerous, being able to force me to this point, you should be proud. Xiaonan, accompany Yahiko and Nagato to sleep in the Yellow Spring. But don't worry, in the world of the Eye of the Moon, you can still be happy, carefree, and enjoy the peace you dream of. Chapter 534. Conan tried her best to turn her head so that she could barely see Hoodlum, who was standing behind her and piercing her abdomen with kunai. Hoodlum was wearing a mask that only revealed his right eye. At this moment, the upper half of the mask was shattered by the explosive tag that Conan pasted on the mask. Although Conan still couldn't see Hoodlum's face because of the lower half of the mask and the bandage wrapped around his forehead, it was enough for Conan to see Hoodlum's eyes at this moment. In Hoodlum's right eye was still the familiar three-tomo Sharingan that Conan was very familiar with. In Hoodlum's other eye that had been hidden under the mask, a completely white eyeball appeared in it. Conan had never seen such an eyeball before, but if Sasuke appeared here, he would immediately understand what happened just now. A completely white eye without any color. This was the appearance of the Sharingan after using Izanagi. Indeed, Hoodlum's illusory time was actually limited, which was 5 minutes. The 600 billion explosive tag that Conan used before exploded for more than 10 minutes. Generally speaking, Hoodlum couldn't be unscathed in it. However, Hoodlum hid a three-tomo Sharingan in his left eye. When he realized that he couldn't protect himself through conventional means, Hoodlum also made a prompt decision to use Izanagi to reverse reality while he was still able to make himself semi-illusory. Turning all unfavorable factors into favorable factors, such an effect seemed a bit illusory and unspecific, but Hoodlum still used this ability to strengthen his semi-illusory state, allowing him to survive this earth-shaking explosion. Although Hoodlum was unscathed, he didn't immediately attack Conan. Instead, after finding that Conan had relaxed, Hoodlum suddenly appeared from the void where he was hiding and directly stabbed Conan's abdomen. Looking at Hoodlum's face that was less than 1/3 exposed, Conan's eyes widened, and her mouth opened and closed. She seemed to want to say something, but she couldn't say a word for a long time. Hoodlum glanced at Conan and didn't say anything. Instead, he pulled out the kunai that he had stabbed deep into Conan's abdomen. Originally, due to the existence of kunai, the wound did not bleed profusely, but at this moment, after coming into contact with the air, the blood could not stop flowing out. A large amount of crimson liquid gushed out from Xiao Nan's abdomen. Drops of crimson blood splattered on the charred ground. Black and red were known as the most matching colors in this world. At this moment, Xiao Nan, who had long purple hair, was lying weakly on the ground. This scene unexpectedly had an indescribable beauty. But at this moment, no one could see such a beautiful scene. Although Xiao Nan's consciousness was a little hazy, her body was still very clear. In fact, her senses were even sharper than before. The smell of soil and blood rushed into Xiao Nan's nose. This smell was very similar to the smell of the country of rain during the war when Xiao Nan was still young. In a trance, Xiao Nan seemed to see two figures standing in front of her. She tried hard to identify the two tall and familiar figures in front of her, but when she focused her eyes, she found that the two tall figures had turned into two rather childish children. One of the children had orange hair, while the other had red hair that covered most of her face. Both of them stretched out their little hands towards Xiao Nan and said together, "Brother Xiao Nan, I'm sorry, Brother Xiao Nan. Come on Xiao Nan, we've been waiting for you for a long time." Xiao Nan raised her hand, only to find that her hand was no longer as big as she was familiar with. Instead, it had become small and tender. "I'm coming. Nagato and Yahiko." Xiao Nan's voice also turned into the soft voice she had when she was a child. It was no longer as cold as ice. Hearing Xiao Nan's response, Nagato and Yahiko had dazzling smiles on their faces. At this moment, Nagato no longer had the look of deep hatred, and Yahiko no longer had the feeling of carrying the whole world on his back. Xiao Nan also didn't have the stiff feeling of forcibly closing her heart. Everyone was no longer as mature as they were after experiencing hardships. Everyone had finally returned to the difficult but exceptionally satisfying and happy days from before. After eliminating Xiao Nan, Hoodlum walked step by step into the Rain Village. After passing through many checkpoints and hidden doors, Hoodlum walked to the most secretive place in the Rain Village. Deep underground, except for the people that Hoodlum could trust, no one knew that there was such a building under the Rain Village. The ghetto mazo that was used to seal the tailed beasts was now in this space. Ju, who was half black and half white and wrapped in a huge pitcher plant, was now standing in front of the ghetto mazo. "Oh. Is everything done?" Zetsu was an excellent perceptive ninja, and when Hoodlum walked in, he didn't deliberately hide his figure. Therefore, although Zetsu didn't look at Hoodlum with his eyes, he was very sensitive to Hoodlum's presence. Zetsu turned around and saw Hoodlum's somewhat embarrassed appearance. After all, Hoodlum's mask was directly smashed in half, and the Sharingan in his left eye was also pale white. It seems that Xiao Nan still caused some damage to you. Zetsu's voice had a bit of sarcasm, and such a tone made Hoodlum extremely uncomfortable. With a bit of impatience, Hoodlum said to Zetsu, "It doesn't matter, go prepare for the eye transplant surgery. Now that Nagato is dead, there is a flaw in our plan. Transplant the Rinnegan into my eye, and then we'll think of another way to resurrect Uchiha Madara." Hoodlum was the one who called himself Uchiha Madara in the 5 Kages tournament, and he seemed to be very familiar with Uchiha Madara. However, at this moment, he spoke in a completely different tone. Chapter 535. Hearing Hoodlum's sudden proposal that was completely different from the previous plan, Zetsu's eyes suddenly became sharp. For Zetsu, although Hoodlum is still somewhat useful, Uchiha Madara is more important. Hoodlum. No, there are no outsiders here, I'll just call you by your real name. Uchiha Obito, you should know who I am. White Zetsu is a clone cultivated from Senju Takuma's cells, and I'm a consciousness born from Madara-sama's Rinnegan. For me, nothing is more important than the perfect resurrection of Madara-sama. Now you're telling me that we should give up on the perfect resurrection of Madara-sama with Geto? As Black Zetsu spoke, the white egg-shaped objects hanging from the Geto golem's body began to move. They looked like flower buds or fruits. Like flowers blooming, the white egg-shaped objects opened one by one. White Zetsu that looked similar to White Zetsu appeared. White Zetsu's eyes were blank. Although these mass-produced White Zetsu weren't that strong, each of them was close to the strength of an elite Chunin. Although in front of Hoodlum or Uchiha Obito, these White Zetsu who only had the strength of an elite Chunin weren't that difficult to deal with, Obito had to explain in order to avoid unnecessary trouble. Black Zetsu, Nagato is dead now. The only person who is qualified to use the Rinnegan is me, who has the blood of the Uchiha clan and Senju Takuma's Mokuton cells, but now is the time of war with the shinobi world. Not to mention that I only have one Rinnegan, even if I have two, I can't use Geto to resurrect Uchiha Madara. This is not because I cherish my life, but because such a battle needs me, and it has to be me. Do you understand? Obito slowly took off the half-broken mask on his face, revealing his real face. It was a face that was very different from ordinary people. After all, during the Third Shinobi World War, Obito was ambushed at Kanobi Bridge, and the right half of his body was smashed into meat paste by the Rock Shinobi. If it wasn't for the fact that he was seriously injured at the place where the old Uchiha Madara was hiding, Obito would have died there as Kakashi thought. You've thought it through, you still have the talisman in your heart. Don't throw your life away because of a moment of unwisdom. Would Uchiha Madara trust a descendant who was related to him by blood? Of course not. Uchiha Madara is someone who doesn't even care about his own family as long as he can make himself stronger. Madara has no credibility at all for the mere connection between the two of them. What Madara needs is not a good enough descendant, but a tool that can faithfully carry out his plan. Therefore, in the heart of Uchiha Obito, Madara transplanted a talisman that can control Obito's life and death. The method of controlling the talisman was also taught by Uchiha Madara to Black Zetsu, who was derived from his consciousness. Chapter 536. Black Zetsu stood aside with a gloomy face, watching Obito experimenting with the power of his Rinnegan. His eyes flashed from time to time, making people unable to see the depth of his eyes. Did he really only find the Rinnegan? Of course not. With Black Zetsu's ability, even if Watergate really put the Rinnegan in different places, Black Zetsu can still find it. So in fact, Black Zetsu got a complete pair of Rinnegan, but out of precaution against Obito, Black Zetsu only gave one of them to Obito. And regarding the Rinnegan, although Watergate paid a certain amount of attention to it, it was just a little bit of attention. After Watergate returned to the Woodleaf village, he actually saw the report of the loss of the Rinnegan, but Watergate didn't show any other negative emotions. Because Watergate knew that such an extremely valuable thing for the Akatsuki was taken away by him, and the Akatsuki wouldn't let it go. And Watergate naturally couldn't use the powerful ninjas of the Woodleaf village to guard the Rinnegan, because in Watergate's understanding, in a real war, the ability of a person to play is limited. When Nagato suddenly attacked the Woodleaf village, it was also because of the sudden incident that the Woodleaf village didn't react in time. Otherwise, how could they have the opportunity to release the Super Shinra Tensei, which takes a long time to gather power? So Watergate only used the highest level of protection under normal circumstances to guard the Rinnegan. It would be good if he could protect it, but if he couldn't, it wouldn't have much impact. Obito didn't have time to observe Black Zetsu's reaction. He just put on the high-strength mask he just made through release on his head. Taking off the Akatsuki's uniform that had become slightly broken, Obito took out a large blue-gray robe from his Kamui dimension, and the signature weapon of the Uchiha Madara, Xiaofan. Since everything is ready, let's go see an old friend who is very useful to us, right? With an unfathomable smile, Obito said to Black Zetsu standing beside him. Very useful? Hearing Obito's description, Black Zetsu finally got a little interested. After all, in the original plan, the main combat power of the Akatsuki against the ninja world was the clones of the White Zetsu that just appeared. Although the number of clones is large enough, according to the current situation of the 5 villages united, the Akatsuki is still in a disadvantageous position in terms of high-end combat power. Black Zetsu's mind was agile enough, so he naturally quickly understood what to say to Obito's to say. Pharmacist's pocket? Black Zetsu didn't know why he had some impression of this person who could only follow behind Orochimaru as a follower. He. Hearing Black Zetsu calling his name, Kabuto's mouth made a slightly hoarse voice, which sounded somewhat similar to the voice of the dead Orochimaru. At this moment, Kabuto's appearance and aura were very similar to Orochimaru's. Even Black Zetsu and Obito felt a little uncomfortable. I didn't expect that the Akatsuki's mysterious Zetsu, Sama would remember the name of a nobody like me. It's really scary. Obviously, it was a very ordinary self-modesty, but at this moment, it made people feel particularly uncomfortable when it came out of Kabuto's mouth. It even gave people a feeling of, you should have remembered me. But fortunately, Black Zetsu and Obito were both thoughtful people, and they didn't show their inner discomfort, but it was obvious that Black Zetsu was looking at Obito. It was as if he was telling Obito, if you don't show me the value of this guy, I can't guarantee that I won't kill this disgusting guy in the next moment. Obito and Black Zetsu have been together for so long, naturally, he knew that Black Zetsu was a bit of a profit-oriented person, so he said to Kabuto, it seems that our Zetsu, Sama doesn't recognize your qualifications to participate in this operation. Kabuto, show us your ability. After hearing Obito's words, Kabuto looked at Black Zetsu with a smile on his face, then stretched out his hand from his wide robe. The pale white hand with a little snake scale pattern began to slowly print in front of Kabuto's chest, and the chakra in Kabuto's body began to surge, and a ninjutsu was slowly being completed. Black Zetsu looked at Kabuto's hands and quickly recognized what this ninjutsu was. Created by the second Hokage Senju Tobarama, perfected in the hands of Woodleaf Snake Lord Orochimaru, and called by Sandaime Hokage as playing with the souls of the dead Edo Tensei. So that's how it is, the so-called help is the Edo Tensei? Through the Edo Tensei, the strong who have passed away are summoned, and these strong people are used to fill the gap in high-end combat power of the Akatsuki. How long has the history of the ninja world been, and how many legendary figures have been born in this long history? By summoning these ninjas who have been drowned in the long river of ninja world, the Akatsuki will definitely not lose to the coalition forces of the 5 great ninja villages in terms of high-end combat power. However, the Edo Tensei also has a fatal drawback, that is, the reincarnated people will not be able to exert their original strength so easily. If the spiritual control of the reincarnated powerhouses is released, then they will never accept the orders of others so easily. And if the spiritual control of the reincarnated powerhouses is forced, then the reincarnated powerhouses will become less flexible puppets. Such a problem can't be solved even by Orochimaru, otherwise, when the first Hokage and second Hokage invaded Wood Leaf, they wouldn't be so easy to deal with. Could Medicine Master's pocket bring him some surprises? Chapter 537. Black Zetsu and Obito's eyes were firmly staring at Kabuto, and Kabuto also knew that this was a key test for him to participate in Akatsuki's plan. Although it seemed that there was no change, but Kabuto's heart was still stretched taut. Finally, the Edo Tensei was completed, and several coffins emerged from the soil one after another. Counting the number of coffins, there were 6 coffins at this moment. Controlling the coffin that he had summoned, he opened the seals on the coffin one by one. Finally, the expert hidden in the coffin revealed himself. "This is..." A slightly puzzled voice sounded, and a person wearing a dark red hooded robe walked out of the coffin. He stepped on the cold and damp ground with his slightly pale bare feet, as if he was sizing up the world around him. Soon, the figures of Black Zetsu, Kabuto, and Obito were projected in this man's eyes. "You've even summoned him out? Aren't you afraid that he will get out of your control and cause trouble for us?" Obito looked at the man who came out of the coffin, and a hint of vigilance flashed in his eyes. Because this man, like him, had Rinnegan formed by ripples in his eyes. This man was the former leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato. Uchiha Madara. Zetsu. A trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. Nagato stretched out his slightly slender palm, and chakra quickly condensed in it, and a group of seemingly small but particularly eye-catching black brilliance was born in Nagato's palm. Shinra Tensei. Before he could finish the name of the technique, the powerful repulsion in Nagato's palm disappeared in an instant. Looking at the Yakushi Kabuto who summoned Nagato, at this moment, his chest was covered with a hand seal that didn't belong to a conventional ninjutsu. It seems that such a hand seal suppressed the Shinra Tensei that Nagato was about to release. "You! What the hell?" Nagato naturally recognized Kabuto as the one who pulled him back from the underworld. Just as he wanted to say something to Kabuto, Kabuto directly used chakra in his body to force Nagato to close his mouth. "Noisy! Now is not the time for you to speak." Nagato, who was once a god, who had the eyes of the sage, who was the commander of the Akatsuki, was now being scolded by Kabuto. Such a scene was absolutely impossible when Nagato was alive, but at this moment, all of this was happening. After scolding Nagato, a happy smile appeared on Kabuto's face. In fact, Kabuto was also a pitiful person. He was pulled to the root by Danzo at a young age and trained as a spy. Being a spy for a long time has caused Kabuto's mind to become sick. Later, because of the death of Kabuto, who was also a root ninja, Kabuto's mind collapsed. Kabuto be the root, but it was only the symptoms, it didn't solve the root cause. After he followed Orochimaru's the root. After Orochimaru was killed by Sasuke, in Kabuto's mind, he directly lost all meaning of life. So in order to explore the meaning of his existence, Kabuto conducted a series of experiments on his own body. Kabuto Yakushi transplanted the cells of Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi into his own body, making his body infinitely closer to that of a white phosphorus Orochi. After contracting the Snake Clan, Kabuto Yakushi came to the Earth Dragon Cave secret jutsu that Orochimaru had vaguely mentioned in front of him before, which Orochimaru was very interested in. No one knew what Medicine Master Duo experienced inside the Earth Dragon Cave, but when Medicine Master Duo came out of the cave, his body had completely changed. His skin color has become pale white, and snake-like scale-like patterns spread all over his body. If you lift the loose robe on his body at this moment, you can see a white python stretching out from his abdomen. Kabuto's nature is extremely inferior, so Kabuto found feelings of approval from others again and again. At this moment, stepping on someone who was originally high and mighty under his feet, this feeling made Kabuto feel an extreme sense of existence. The reason why Kabuto wanted to participate in Obito's plan this time was that he was indeed attracted by the Tsukuyomi perfect world described by Obito, and he also hoped that he could leave a mark of his own in the history of the shinobi world. Regardless of whether the Tsukuyomi project will succeed or not, participating in it is Kabuto's hope. You can actually control the consciousness of the person who was reincarnated by the Edo Tensei? That's a good change. Black Zetsu's eyes were so sharp that he understood the variables in the moment when Kabuto controlled Nagato. At this moment, Nagato's eyes were full of anger, but his powerless appearance made Black Zetsu very interested. Then I'll let you see the other existences I've prepared. With that said, Kabuto controlled the coffin he summoned through the Edo Tensei and opened the lid one by one. Sure enough, the ones who appeared were the original members of the Akatsuki. Uchiha Itachi, Sasori, Deidara, Kakuzu, and Nagato, who was already under the control of Kabuto. Akatsuki's members who had already died, except for the half-dead Haiden and Konan who had just been killed by Obito, almost all of them were present. But who is in the extra coffin? Even Black Zetsu was a little interested. Seeing the curiosity in Black Zetsu's eyes, Kabuto's expression was also a little proud. He used chakra in his body to control the lid of the last coffin to open. A person wearing red plate armor with long hair like a hedgehog was lying quietly with his eyes closed. Although a pair of eyes were tightly closed, that kind of domineering aura was still emitted from this person who had his eyes closed. The moment Black Zetsu saw this person, he had already flashed to Kabuto's side. He grabbed Kabuto's neck with his hand, and Kabuto was directly lifted in the air by Black Zetsu. How dare you? After saying such a sentence to Kabuto, Black Zetsu turned his head to Obito, with a cold look in his eyes. He almost shouted the same sentence to Obito. How dare you? Chapter 538. The person lying in the coffin with his eyes closed and exuding a terrifying momentum is none other than Sandaime, the biggest shadow in Inoki's heart, the first Hokage of Woodleaf, the god of shinobi, Senju Takuma, the leader of the resurgence of the Uchiha clan, the biggest nightmare in the hearts of countless ninjas, Uchiha Madara. As we mentioned before, in Black Zetsu's heart, Uchiha Madara is the most important person, although we don't know whether this kind of importance is because Black Zetsu said that he is a consciousness derived from Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan, or some other reason. At this moment, Black Zetsu didn't seem to care about anything in the past. He directly attacked Yakushi's pocket and released a powerful aura towards Obito. At this moment, Black Zetsu's ability is far more powerful than when he was a sensor ninja. Sure enough, Black Zetsu is hiding something. Looking at the powerful momentum surging in Black Zetsu's body at this moment, Obito's heart flashed a hint of understanding. Black Zetsu definitely has a plan, otherwise, why would he hide his strength? Edo Tensei itself is not an easy ninjutsu to perform. To summon a ninja who has passed away back to the world, a lot of preparations are needed. First of all, a certain amount of DNA of the deceased is needed. If this condition is not met, then a living person is needed as a sacrifice, as a vessel for the reincarnated person, and finally, the soul of the reincarnated person must exist in the Pure Land. If the soul has been sealed, then it cannot be summoned. Although such a condition sounded simple, it was not so simple to satisfy it. Not to mention the living sacrifice and the soul not being sealed, how can Yakushi's pocket get enough DNA of Uchiha Madara? In addition to Black Zetsu, the only one who clearly knows the location of Uchiha Madara's body is Obito, who was cultivated by Uchiha Madara. So, where did Madara's DNA come from? It's not so hard to imagine. Obito summoned Uchiha Madara to test Black Zetsu's attitude and background. Obviously, Obito has achieved his goal, hasn't he? Black Zetsu, calm down. Looking at Black Zetsu's excited look, Obito stepped forward and patted Black Zetsu's shoulder, as if he wanted Black Zetsu not to be so impulsive. Then he said to Black Zetsu, "You're right. I know that you are the product of Uchiha Madara's consciousness, but that doesn't mean that you will always be his vassal. You are an independent person, you have your thoughts, you have your ambitions. why do you have to bind yourself to the framework that Uchiha Madara set for you? Obito glanced at Uchiha Madara, who was lying motionless in the coffin, and said to Black Zetsu, "Now, look at you, the nominal creator. Right now, he's just a sharp sword in our hands. He doesn't have a real Rinnegan, he doesn't have his own body, and he's even bound by us. Why should we let this person who has been eliminated by the times be so high above us? Why should we let such a person dominate us? Black Zetsu, learn to live for yourself." Obito's left eye that was transplanted with the Rinnegan slowly opened as he spoke, and the Sharingan that originally existed in his right eye also quickly turned into a Mangekyo Sharingan that surpassed the 3-Tomo Sharingan. At this moment, Obito was not only using his own words to confuse Black Zetsu, but also using his dojutsu to unconsciously influence Black Zetsu's judgment. Looking closely at Black Zetsu's eyes, Obito could clearly see some changes in them. The more he saw the ups and downs of the ninja world, the more he felt that he had seen the essence of human nature. Is there any loyalty in this world that will never change? Maybe some people have, but Black Zetsu, who has been with him for a long time, is not such a person. This is also the reason why Obito deliberately cooperated with Kabuto to test Black Zetsu. After tasting the sweetness of power, how can Obito allow himself to be controlled by a person without freedom? At this moment, although there was restraint in Black Zetsu's eyes, there was an obvious change hidden in them. All intelligent life forms in this world had a common desire, and that was freedom. Although Black Zetsu is not a normal life, but Black Zetsu has consciousness and wisdom beyond most people, so Black Zetsu's change at this moment is really a normal performance in Obito's eyes. I'm not afraid that you want too much, I'm afraid that you don't want anything. As long as you still have a desire, Obito has enough confidence to control such a person in his hands, and make the other party have no regrets. Isn't Nagato the best evidence? Live for myself? Hearing Obito's words, Black Zetsu's mouth slowly repeated the last sentence that Obito said, as if this sentence was a heavy hammer that hit the hidden existence in Black Zetsu's heart. Kabuto, who was held in Black Zetsu's hand but looked completely unmoved, after hearing Obito's words, his eyes flashed with envy and longing. And the performance of Black Zetsu and Kabuto was naturally reflected in Obito's eyes. Great things can be expected. In Obito's heart, there was only such a thought at this moment. Of course, Obito is not naive to think that Black Zetsu and Kabuto can completely change a person at this moment, but before the real outbreak of the war, Obito has enough confidence to rely on his Silver Tongue, Rinnegan, and Sharingan to make Black Zetsu and Kabuto truly submit to him. Black Zetsu slowly put down Kabuto, looked at Obito and then looked at Uchiha lying in the coffin, and then said, "I can't say that I'm not tempted at all, but this is not enough to convince me. Madara-sama's body and soul are not to be desecrated. I hope you don't let Madara-sama return to the ninja world in such a way." Although there is still some resistance to such behavior, it's obvious that Black Zetsu has already relented. At the moment of life and death, he can abandon his respect for Uchiha Madara and let Uchiha Madara return to the ninja world through the Edo Tensei? This is really interesting. Chapter 539. After hearing Black Zetsu's words, Obito looked at Kabuto and nodded slowly. Kabuto quickly understood the meaning of Obito's words, and with his hand seals and chakra surging in his body, Nagato, who was originally under Kabuto's control, slowly walked into his coffin. Under Kabuto's control, the coffins continued to close one by one, and just like the coffins slowly emerged from the ground, the coffins also slowly sank into the ground. Obito waved to Kabuto, signaling him to leave with him. Now Black Zetsu was obviously in a confused state, but Obito, who was well aware of the changes in human nature, knew that although at this time, if he continued to say all kinds of words to Black Zetsu, he would definitely gain something. However, Obito wisely chose to give Black Zetsu a chance to relieve himself. It was easy to control a person for a while, but if you want to make the person completely take your words as his own creed, then you have to learn how to take it one step at a time. The days are long, and the time is long. Whether it's Black Zetsu or Kabuto, how can they escape from his hands? I, Uchiha Obito, am not willing to be anyone's chess piece. If you want me to join the big game of Shinobi World, then I must be the one who controls black and white. Obito and Kabuto left the secret cave together, leaving only Black Zetsu standing in the same place in silence. When Black Zetsu's spiritual power scanned everything around him, the originally silent Black Zetsu suddenly seemed like a different person. Step by step, he walked to the place where Uchiha Madara's coffin appeared. With a bit of contempt in his eyes, Black Zetsu slowly stepped on the ground where Uchiha Madara appeared. Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Obito. Nagato. Black Zetsu's mouth began to slowly recite the names of the people he had followed, but there was no uncontrollable anger in his eyes when he saw Uchiha Madara's soul being desecrated. The only one who can make me loyal is my mother. As for you? Obediently be a chess piece in my hands, and achieve my goal. You really think that you can control me with Rinnegan, Sharingan, and a little bit of bewitchment? You're really stupid. With that said, Black Zetsu's mouth couldn't help but let out a strange laughter. Although everything is a little rough, it's still within the scope of my plan. Mother, soon you will be able to return to this world. Looking at Namikaze Minato who was sitting in front of him, Nangongja's expression was calm, but his eyes still showed some gloominess. Hokage-sama, the fourth Shinobi World War is coming. I don't know why Hokage-sama came to my house, a person who is not far from the mundane world. After Watergate came to Nangongja's house, he almost always talked about him. Finally, Nangongja was fed up with Watergate's behavior. So Nangongja directly said such rude words to Watergate, but Watergate didn't seem to care about Nangongja's rudeness. I don't think Nangong is a person who doesn't set foot in this world. Watergate's mouth had a bit of a smile. That kind of feeling made people feel like he was holding the pearl of wisdom. Such an expression made Nangongja very unhappy. It was as if Minato had something on him that could be used against him. The more powerful a person is, the more self-conscious he is. As long as others want to control him, then the anger in his heart can't be restrained. What do you mean? Although the malice in his heart was very strong, in the end, Nangongja still didn't intend to directly fall out with Watergate, so he said to Watergate. When Minato saw Nangongja's reaction, he said calmly, "That's right. Uchiha Sasuke must be in your house, right?" Hearing Watergate's words, Nangongja's heart was relieved. Because Nangongja was very confident that no one could find out that he hid Sasuke in his house, because just a few days ago, Nangongja opened the space channel to the Lion Clan's different space. Now Sasuke has returned to his parents in the Lion Clan's different space, so Nangongja didn't regard Sasuke's problem as a means to blackmail him. Watergate was very keenly aware that Nangongja was not nervous at all. Watergate knew that he used his strength in the wrong place. Seeing that Nangongja was about to open his mouth to say something, Watergate directly blocked all of Nangongja's words in his mouth. Bloody shirt. When he heard this word, it was obvious that Nangongja's pupils dilated slightly. These were all subconscious reactions. Even if a person could control his facial expression, there was no way to change such an almost instinctive reaction. Before coming, Watergate learned such a trick from Mori Ibiki, the head of the Woodleaf Interrogation Department. Obviously, such a trick was indeed very effective. Nangongja didn't think that Watergate would say such a thing without evidence. Since Watergate dared to say such a word in front of him, then there must be a reason. Under the persecution of Danzo, Nangong Jonin had left the Woodleaf for a period of time. Watergate looked at Nangongja and said slowly, and it was during this period of time that the Bloody Shirt Pavilion, which had always been a hidden force in the shinobi world, suddenly appeared in the shinobi world. Moreover, the Bloody Shirt Pavilion changed its previous passive attitude and began to actively expand its power. Through various methods, the prestige of the Bloody Shirt Pavilion in the shinobi world is getting higher and higher. Through such operations, the Bloody Shirt Pavilion has even faintly become the sixth major force in the shinobi world. If it wasn't for the fact that the Bloody Shirt Pavilion is not a traditional shinobi force, I think the Bloody Shirt Pavilion would have become a member of this 5 Kages conference. And Nangong Jonin has also shown his powerful intelligence system many times before. In addition to the 5 major shinobi villages, only the Bloody Shirt Pavilion has such an intelligence system, right? And even if my previous guesses are my own blind guesses, there is one thing that can't be changed. That is, Nangong Jonin, the power you practice is not something else, but the internal energy system of the Bloody Shirt Pavilion. Chapter 540. In fact, the so-called evidence in Watergate's mouth wasn't very convincing evidence. Just by relying on such a conjecture, it's impossible to directly link Nangongzhe and the Bloodcloak Pavilion. But this isn't a court, and Watergate doesn't need any impeccable evidence. As long as Watergate is willing to believe, then no one will have the opportunity to criticize. This is the current Konoha, and this is the current 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato, whose reputation is at its peak. Originally, from Nangongzhe's point of view, Woodleaf is a good place to settle down. After all, Woodleaf is one of the few forces in the shinobi world that is full of human feelings. Even the Bloodcloak Pavilion, which Nangongzhe brought up, has a clear distinction between superior and inferior. Having human feelings is an advantage, but also a disadvantage, because sufficient human feelings also means a certain degree of ambiguity between superior and inferior. In other ninja villages, there are very few existences that can be compared with Kage. And in Woodleaf, Watergate hasn't really made a move yet, but it has almost become a tripartite situation of Root, Elder Group, and Hokage. Indeed, only when power is balanced can it be fair. But in the ninja world, when is there a need for fairness? To a large extent, the strong devour the weak, and the strong are above all the weak. Fairness? Where did this joke come from? 4th Hokage-sama. After listening to Watergate's words, and instantly figured out the key points, Nangongzhe looked at Watergate sitting opposite him, and said the full name of Minato Watergate. This attitude is enough to see how indignant Nangongzhe is about Watergate's current actions. If you can imagine, Nangongzhe is now like putting his sword on Watergate's neck. Do you know what you are doing now? Nangongzhe's eyes were filled with endless anger. Even the air around Nangongzhe seems to have dropped several degrees because of Nangongzhe's anger at this moment. In my life, I hate people who threaten me. The last person who dared to threaten me like this is Shimura Danzo, who died in your hands. At this moment, Nangongzhe's words were actually very straightforward. At this moment, Nangongzhe is telling Watergate that if Watergate dares to threaten him, then he will put Watergate in Shimura Danzo's position. Since you dare to threaten me, then you should be prepared to become my enemy. After hearing Nangongzhe's words, Watergate did not show the same agitation as Nangongzhe. After all, compared to a slightly simple organization like the Blood Garment Pavilion, the Woodleaf is simply a complicated organization. Watergate was able to rush out of such a chaotic situation and control the Woodleaf in his own hands. Watergate's methods are definitely more complicated than Nangongzhe's. Nangongzhe, please don't be agitated. I'm not here to threaten you, I'm here to ask for your help. Although Shui Men made a request and seemed to be very kind, the more he acted like this, the more Nangongzhe felt indescribable disgust in his eyes. At this moment, Watergate is the kind of politician that Nangongzhe dislikes the most. As a swordsman, dark and boring things like politics are simply the most annoying existence. I'm not here to investigate what kind of relationship you have with the Blood Garment Pavilion, Nangongzhe, but to protect the future of the shinobi world. Nangongzhe has participated in this 5 Kage conference with me. You are also very clear about the declaration of war from Akatsuki. Pulling the entire shinobi world into the Tsukuyomi world, how crazy and inhumane is such a plan? Watergate said, and a dazzling light bloomed in his eyes. That light looked very upright, just like the embodiment of justice. However, Nangongzhi ignored this seemingly righteous light. What Nangongzhi saw was the unquenchable pursuit of power and fame in the depths of Minato's eyes. Nangongzhi, as the Hokage of Woodleaf Village, as one of the countless shinobi in the shinobi world, I request you to contact the Blood Garment Pavilion and let the Blood Garment Pavilion become a member of our shinobi allied forces. Watergate tried to make his eyes full of sincerity, and even seemed to be excited in his heart. He sat up a little from his original kneeling position, and stretched out a hand in front of Nangongzhi, as if he wanted to let Nangongzhi hold his hand firmly. If it were other people, they might have been moved by Watergate's words just now. But Nangongzhi is different. To put it bluntly, Nangongzhi is an extremely selfish person. Except for the things he cares about, Nangongzhi is in a state of indifference. Indeed, if Akatsuki's Eye of the Moon project really becomes a reality, the entire shinobi world will become the target of Akatsuki. For Watergate and even all shinobi, this is an unacceptable reality. Let yourself become a member of an illusory world, and let others control your life wantonly. Don't joke around. If Nangongzhi was an ordinary ninja, then he would definitely choose to cooperate with Minato under the pressure of having no way out. But can Nangongzhi really only stay in the shinobi world? Nangongzhi is not without a way out. The Lion Clan space hidden in the void is Nangongzhi's biggest trump card. Even if the shinobi world is really in the hands of Akatsuki, Nangongzhi can go to the Lion Clan space to live. Nangongzhi is not without a way out. Shinobi world? Shinobi allied forces? Looking at Watergate, Nangongzhi slowly muttered the words Watergate just said in his mouth. So, this is the way to save the shinobi world? Nangongzhi left the meeting of the 5 Kage early, so he didn't know the specific plan of Watergate and the other 4. Although there is a very strong smell of war in the Woodleaf in the past few days, Nangongzhi didn't have much interest in knowing what happened. Saving the shinobi world. Saving the future. What a noble action. Looking at Watergate, Nangongzhi's mouth suddenly hung a bit of a smile, but in Watergate's eyes, it was full of ridicule. I refuse. Since you have already guessed my identity, then I will say it directly. I am the head of the Blood Robe Pavilion, the highest leader of the Blood Robe Pavilion. Now, on behalf of the Blood Robe Pavilion, I declare to you that the Blood Robe Pavilion will not join the so-called shinobi allied forces. Chapter 541. As a person who pursues strength, the most important thing is to see one's own heart clearly. Watergate was like this, and Nangongzhi was the same. People have to examine themselves again and again to make great progress. Nangongzhi was able to reach this step naturally because he examined his own heart countless times. Nangongzhi did fight for the Woodleaf, but that was not because Nangongzhi recognized the Woodleaf, but because Nangongzhi almost coincidentally brought his young sister to a small town under the Woodleaf. If Nangongzhi happened to go to Sunagakure or Kyumo Shinobu, Nangongzhi also had the possibility of joining these ninja villages. For Nangongzhi, Woodleaf was not a special existence. It was just a place he passed by. The current Woodleaf for Nangongzhi was far inferior to the Blood Cloth Pavilion. After all, the Blood Cloth Pavilion was the power in Nangongzhi's own hands. If he had to compare, the Blood Cloth Pavilion could be regarded as his own home. This is why every time Nangongzhi helped Woodleaf, it was only because of a whim or a fair exchange of interests. But now, Watergate wanted to use this kind of method mixed with threats to let Nangongzhi and even the Blood Cloth Pavilion behind Nangongzhi directly participate in the ninja allied forces decided by the 5 Kages Conference. But now that the 5 Kages Conference is over, the various positions in such an allied forces must have been allocated. Now that the Blood Cloth Pavilion was involved in such a situation, what role would the disciples of the Blood Cloth Pavilion play in it? They would be nothing more than cannon fodder. The blood cloth pavilion was the power in his hands, and Nangongzhi would never allow anyone to treat the blood cloth pavilion as a dispensable consumable. When he heard Nangongzhi unabashedly admit that he was the supreme leader of the blood cloth pavilion, Watergate had already expected that Nangongzhi would refuse his invitation with a relatively strong attitude. Watergate has never underestimated any strong person, let alone Nangongzhi, who he was not sure he could control. "I'm being rude, but the shinobi world needs the help of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. I hope you can consider it carefully. After all, we can't guarantee that we can successfully defeat the Akatsuki with only the ninja allied forces. In order to protect the future of the ninja world, even without the participation of the Blood Cloth Pavilion, we will do our best." Watergate apologized to Nangongzhi, but when he spoke, the words ninja allied forces, defeat, and do our best were particularly clear. There is also a saying in the ninja world, that is, to resist foreign aggression, one must first stabilize the internal situation. If you want to win a war, you must maintain stability in your own camp. Although the Blood Cloth Pavilion has not yet made clear which side they are on, and some of the conflicts between the Blood Cloth Pavilion and the Akatsuki are relatively secret things, Watergate did not know. Seeing that Watergate was still putting pressure on him verbally, Nangongzhi's mood became worse and worse. Taking a deep look at Watergate, Nangongzhi looked at Watergate and said coldly, "See the guest out." Although he has tried his best to restrain himself, the majestic anger hidden in it can't be suppressed. And Watergate knew that he can't continue to speak, the pressure is enough, so he doesn't need to continue to add fuel to the fire and let Nangongzhi directly explode here. Nodding to Nangongzhi, Watergate didn't wait for Mashiro sitting on the side to send him to the door. He has already walked to the side of the door and directly opened the door and walked out. When Watergate has already walked away, Nangongzhi finally didn't need to suppress the anger in his heart, he directly slapped the short table in front of him. Bang! Obviously it was just such a slap, but it made a terrible sound like a tsunami hitting a boulder. After such a slap, Nangongzhi finally realized that he can't show such an attitude in front of his family, so he slightly apologized to Mashiro sitting on his side and said, "Sorry, I'm really..." Before Nangongzhi finished speaking, Mashiro directly went to Nangongzhi's side and hugged the kneeling on the ground. Hugging Nangongzhi's head, Mashiro put his mouth beside Nangongzhi's ear, not knowing if he is comforting himself or Nangongzhi. His mouth softly whispered, it's okay, Little Linger and Nangongro, who have been hiding in their room, also opened a gap in their room and looked at Nangongzhi sitting on the ground with Mashiro hugging his head. Little Linger's eyes were very pure, but there was a hint of worry in them. But at this moment, Nangongro's eyes were more complicated. The sadness, worry, reluctance, helplessness, and relief mixed together like paint appeared in Nangongro's eyes. But in the end, Little Linger and Nangongro closed their room door, because what Nangongzhi needs now, only Mashiro can give it to him. Feeling the questions from Mashiro and listening to Mashiro's comforting words, Nangongzhi finally calmed down. Nangongzhi has been pursuing a peaceful life all his life, but one troublesome thing after another directly crashed into him. When Nangongzhi was still weak, he could only passively accept this kind of coercion. But now, Nangongzhi has become one of the strongest people in the shinobi world, and only a few people can beat him in terms of power. But now, he has clearly grown and become stronger, but in the face of the general trend, he still looks so powerless. This kind of gap, 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 and this kind of gap made Nangongzhi very unacceptable. But as a mature enough person, although there is no way to perfectly control his emotions in some situations, he must adjust himself after a period of time. At this moment, Nangongzhi naturally adjusted himself with the help of Mashiro. Finally, Nangongzhi got rid of his anger just now, slowly stood up and opened the paper door in his living room. The wind rushed from the outside into the room, blowing the white robe on Nangongzhi's body, and blew the short table that Nangongzhi just slapped into a cloud of dust. Chapter 542. The light outside the room passed through Nangong's shoulder-length hair, and for a moment, Nangong's figure became blurred. The noon sun was a bit hot, and at this moment, when the light sprinkled on Nangong's body, the light suddenly became distorted. The distorted light attached to Nangong's body, and it felt like a layer of fire was burning on Nangong's body. Of course, such a flame didn't appear for no reason, because at this moment, the vast internal force in Nangong's body began to surge crazily. When the huge internal force surged, it was inevitable that a small amount of internal force seeped out of Nangong's skin, and it was this penetration of internal force that made Nangong's body appear magical signs of a flame. We can't just sit here and wait for death. Facing the scenery outside the room and feeling the heat from the midday sun, Nangong's spoke softly but firmly, "I'm sorry. The Fourth Shinobi World War is a war that swept the entire shinobi world, and it is a tribulation for anyone. But it is precisely because of all kinds of tribulations that the world can usher in real progress. This time, facing the threat from Akatsuki and Jubi, the 5 great shinobi villages can unite together to form the Shinobi Allied Forces. Such a thing is really unprecedented," Nangongja said, and his eyes were full of emotion. After all, when he was not so strong, he was a woodleaf shinobi who fought in the shinobi world. It is precisely because he participated in such a war that Nangongja can understand more than others what kind of hostile existence the 5 great shinobi villages are in the shinobi world. Years of war have made each shinobi village have deep hatred between each other. To put it bluntly, if a shinobi from a hostile shinobi village comes to another shinobi village, even if he only kills a civilian, it may be regarded as revenge instead of invasion. The war between the generations, the accumulation of hatred between the generations. So far, after the establishment of the 5 great shinobi villages, there have been 3 large-scale battles that lasted for several years, and after that, there were countless small-scale and medium-scale battles or conflicts. In order to make their shinobi villages stronger, the 5 great shinobi villages have secretly used a lot of small means. This kind of hatred can't be offset by a mere agreement. If such a shinobi allied forces is really pulled into the battlefield, it's hard to say whether they can exert 1/3 of their strength. But there are disadvantages. Naturally there are advantages. And advantages can be fully displayed after overcoming these disadvantages. First, the 5 great shinobi villages. Compared to the 5 great shinobi villages, the biggest advantage is their own heritage. The great shinobi villages, the great shinobi shinobis, the great shinobi villages, shinobi, the great shinobi villages, resources. If alls if shinobi 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 shinobi, shinobi on the other hand, the Akatsuki. How long has the founder of this organization been active in the shinobi world? Even if they have saved a lot of money over the years, but compared to the savings of the 5 great shinobi villages, it's a bit small. So if the war really falls into a quagmire and becomes a tug of war that may drag on for a long time, then the strength of the 5 great shinobi villages will undoubtedly be shown in toughness. Second, it's the people's hearts. The words that Watergate used to persuade Nangongja are actually very effective for many ninjas. As a ninja, they often come into contact with the people and things on the dark side of the shinobi world. Even if they have a sunny nature, it's impossible to guarantee that their nature is not affected at all. Think about the reason why most ninjas accept the task. It's nothing more than money or fame. But can such things really bring a person enough satisfaction to offset all the dark realities they come into contact with? At this time, the appearance of the shinobi allied forces gives all ninjas a reason to become a spiritual pillar, to save the shinobi world, to save the future. Third, this advantage is not an advantage in the war, but if the 5 great shinobi villages become the winner, it will bring changes to the shinobi world. There were many ways to generate the most sincere feelings between people, but comrade in arms was the most common way to generate sincere feelings. For a person who can entrust his life to him, the most sincere feelings will naturally be born. Originally, such emotions will only appear between ninjas of the same shinobi village, but such a shinobi allied forces only gives the 5 great shinobi villages an opportunity to understand and recognize each other. If the Kage of the 5 great shinobi villages can have enough vision of the overall situation and enough love for peace, then such an alliance may become an opportunity to bring long-term peace to the shinobi world. These 3 points are the advantages that Nangongzhi believes that the shinobi allied forces has, and for Nangongzhi, the most noteworthy point is the last one. If the shinobi allied forces wins the final victory, the relationship between the 5 great shinobi villages will rise sharply and ease. Then as an internal force practitioner organization, the Blood Cloak Pavilion, which is different from the shinobi world, will go. People often say, if you are not of the same race, your heart will be different. For a ninja, is an internal force cultivator a different kind of race from him? The reason why chakra practitioners are respected in the shinobi world is naturally because in the long history of chakra, the practitioners of chakra have relied on their own advantages to defeat all kinds of cultivation inheritances. If the 5 great shinobi forces in the shinobi world unite, to a certain extent, it is equivalent to gathering all the ninjas who have the right to speak in the shinobi world. Whether it is a ninja or an internal force practitioner, if they want to grow, in fact, they also need a variety of resources. If such resources can't be obtained from other ninjas, then they can only be obtained from some people other than ninjas, such as internal force practitioners. As the pride of the known internal force practitioners in the shinobi world, Nangongzhi doesn't want internal force to disappear in the long river of history. Chapter 543. At any time, he can't let himself fall into the rhythm of others, whether it's in battle or other things. This time, beyond Nangongzhi's expectation, because of the sudden intervention of Uchiha Obito, which was originally just a game between the 5 Kage villages, it became a game between Akatsuki and the entire ninja world. Because at that time, Nangongzhi wanted to take Uchiha Sasuke back to Woodleaf Ninja Village for treatment as soon as possible, so he couldn't rely on his identity as the leader of the Blood Cloth Pavilion to participate in such a division of interests and alliance of forces in time. Now it seems that he's already one step slower than the other. But that's only for now. Mashiro, get ready now. Nangongzhi looked very ferocious at this moment. He didn't look like a wounded beast when he was in Mashiro's arms. On the contrary, he looked more like a lion patrolling his territory in the vast savanna, imposing and unrivaled. After hearing Nangongzhi's words, Mashiro's face also showed a smile. Although he can accept any state of Nangongzhi, in Mashiro's heart, the one that he likes the most, the one that makes him feel like Nangongzhi's true attitude is the current one. First, bring Ruru and Little Linger to the Blood Cloth Pavilion and properly settle them down. You also clearly heard the conversation between me and Watergate just now. Because of the emotional fluctuation just now, to a certain extent, it can be regarded as a falling out between me and Watergate. Although he has been saying that he and Watergate have fallen out, Nangongzhi's eyes didn't have any similar feelings of worry at this moment. Instead, he was very calm. Even if Mttai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. At this moment, Nangongzhi's calm demeanor was vividly displayed. Minato already has the idea of dragging the blood-robed pavilion into the quagmire of war, and letting the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion become cannon fodder who will only contribute without any return. Once Watergate has such an idea in his heart, it won't be easy to erase it. Now, because of what I just said, Minato already knows what kind of position I have in the Blood Cloak Pavilion. This point has advantages and disadvantages for our current situation. After knowing my identity, Watergate will be more cautious in his thinking and actions, which will buy us some time to prepare. During this time, we don't have to worry about the threat from Watergate. Therefore, I think that the first thing we have to do is to make sure that Watergate doesn't have any means to threaten me. Everyone knows that I care about my family, so the first thing we have to do is to ensure the safety of Little Linger and Ruru. If necessary, we can directly send Little Linger and Ruru to the Lion Clan's alternate space. That place is a fantasy land that won't be invaded by others. Hearing Nangong's words, Mashiro slowly nodded. After all, in the Blood Cloth Pavilion headquarters, Nangongja had secretly set up a spatial coordinate point. In this spatial coordinate point, as long as Nangongja's internal force, sword chi, and natural energy were mixed with a certain ratio, it could become the key to open the alternate space to the Lion Clan's alternate space. In Nangongja's head seal, there is enough mixed energy to open the array. Even Sasuke has it, how can Mashiro not have it? After remembering Nangongja's words, Mashiro then looked at Nangongja. Obviously, he knew that Nangongja still has the next arrangement. After settling Little Linger and Ruru, you immediately inform the Blood Cloth Pavilion to start shrinking their combat power. Gather all the disciples who are comparable to Chunin and above. Each division will provide 50 places, gather all the top 50 disciples together, and receive protection with Little Linger and Ruru. If something goes wrong, immediately open the teleportation array and let these seeds enter the alternate space for protection. Shrinking their combat power. Such an arrangement is no different from directly preparing for war. But just now, Nangongja didn't accept Watergate's invitation, so how will Nangongja join the war? Zhenbai, spread what I'm about to say to the entire Blood Garment Pavilion. With that said, Nangongja's eyes flashed with light. Our Blood Cloth Pavilion is a gathering place of internal strength cultivators that is different from the mainstream forces of the shinobi world. Before I inherited the position of head, we have been living in seclusion and in a state of being bullied in this world. There is a saying that goes like this: those who are not of our clan must have a different heart. For these ninjas, we are different from them. So we have been bullied in many places. Some ninjas who are only Chunin or even Genin are walking in the shinobi world rely on their own shinobi village to do whatever they want, and some of us who are comparable to Chunin don't get the respect we deserve. That's illogical. This is what I don't want to see as the head of the Blood Cloth Pavilion and as an internal strength cultivator. And now, there is an opportunity in front of us. What is about to happen in the shinobi world will be the largest battle that may take place in the past 100 years or even hundreds of years. A large number of ninjas will participate in such a war, and I don't know how many legendary powerhouses who are famous in the shinobi world will lose their lives in it, and more legendary powerhouses will be born in such a war. The golden scale was originally a fish in the pool, but it will become a dragon when it encounters the wind and clouds. Ninjas are recognized as the golden scale, but we internal strength cultivators can also become the so-called golden scale of the dragon. Hearing Nangongja's ambitious words, Mashiro's eyes became more and more blazing. Usually, Nangongja seems to be living in seclusion in the wood leaf, but does Nangongja really have no desire? Of course not. The reason why Nangongja usually looks like he has seen through the world is because these trivial things don't touch the raging flame in Nangongja's heart. This time, facing the threat from the water sect, the ambition in Nangongja's heart, which was originally just a small flame, seemed to have been poured with tung oil, and began to turn into a huge fire that burned the sky. Chapter 544. That's right, from the beginning to the end, Nangongja wasn't ready to join any force. In this Fourth Shinobi World War, there were actually only two hostile forces on the surface. One was the ninja allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages, including the 5 major shinobi villages and the small shinobi villages affiliated with the 5 major shinobi villages. The second was the Akatsuki that annexed the Rain Village. Neither of these forces was suitable for the blood-robed pavilion to join. The Akatsuki itself had been hostile to the blood-robed pavilion for a period of time before. Even now, many people in the blood-robed pavilion would gnash their teeth when mentioning the Akatsuki. After all, the Akatsuki had attacked the headquarters of the blood-robed pavilion before, trying to coerce the blood-robed pavilion to become their subordinate force. Although the blood-robed pavilion didn't suffer too much loss because of the appearance of Nangongja, many disciples of the blood-robed pavilion were seriously injured or even killed. Most of the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion in the headquarters were women, children, old and weak who didn't have much combat power. Although these people didn't have powerful strength, they were also the family members of most of the powerful disciples in the blood-robed pavilion. Their family members were hurt by others, which was more infuriating than their own injuries. Therefore, even if it wasn't for Nangong's personal feelings, it was absolutely impossible for the blood-robed pavilion to unite with the Akatsuki. The ninja allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages was also not a good choice. Compared to the Akatsuki, the allied forces led by the 5 major shinobi villages were more bureaucratic to a certain extent, or more focused on the benefits they could obtain. Namikaze Watergate, Ai, Terumi Mei, Anoki, and Gara. Of the 5 major shinobi villages, perhaps only Gara, who hadn't been in the position for a long time, still had some young blood and impulse in his heart. As for the other 4 Kages, they were all old foxes who had experienced the world. If the blood-robed pavilion really joined the ninja allied forces directly, it wouldn't be far from being gnawed to the bone. Nangongja didn't want to take such a risk, but he couldn't let the blood-clothing pavilion stay out of this and face the possible situation of being besieged on all sides. Therefore, what Nangongja wanted to do at this moment was to show the power of the blood-robed pavilion to the entire shinobi world, letting everyone know that the blood-robed pavilion was not an existence that could be easily manipulated by others. And the behavior that can cause such an effect is to enter the war as a third party, destroying the situation between the allied forces and Akatsuki. The blood garment pavilion was going to become a shit-stirrer that would mess up everyone's plans. I understand. I will inform the blood garment pavilion now and pass on the order you just gave as soon as possible. Mashiro looked at Nangongja, who was in high spirits and full of ambition. Her eyes were filled with love. This was the man she had fallen in love with. Although there were times when he broke down and felt helpless, he could bear any difficulties no matter what. He was a man who would never give in to anyone or anything. Sorry to trouble you, Mashiro. This war is also an opportunity for us. Although the blood-robed pavilion has developed into a force second only to the 5 major shinobi villages in the shinobi world, the gap between us and the 5 major shinobi villages is still very obvious. Even the Sunagakure, which is at the bottom of the 5 major shinobi villages, is actually stronger than us. Let's seize this opportunity and really push the blood-robed pavilion to the same level as the 5 major shinobi villages, or even beyond the 5 major shinobi villages. This is not for those illusory and meaningless ambitions. What I want to do is to let everyone know that I, Nangongja, and my blood-robed pavilion are not a target that anyone can mess with unscrupulously. If there was someone who understood Nangongja better in this world, even his sister, Nangongro, couldn't compare with Mashiro. After all, Nangongja's protection of Nangongro was too strong. Although Nangongro also had the qualities of a ninja, after all, the darkness that she had seen before was deliberately filtered by Nangongja, so in fact, Nangongro didn't know much about some dark things. Mashiro, on the other hand, couldn't tolerate it. Although Mashiro was trained as a basic undercover with no strength when he was en route, even the shallowest darkness en route was enough to make a person unable to accept it. Mashiro was able to make a name for himself in such a place, so naturally, he had experienced a lot of things. After being saved by Nangongja, Mashiro had intervened in a lot of internal and external affairs of the blood-robed pavilion with Nangongja's acquiescence, and his ability had been greatly improved. Until now, although Mashiro didn't have an official position in the blood-robed pavilion, everyone regarded Mashiro as the second-in-command of the blood-robed pavilion. It was precisely because he understood Nangongja that Mashiro could understand that what Nangongja said now wasn't deliberately dignified, but it was really Nangongja's own thoughts. Power was never something that Nangongja pursued. Everything that Nangongja did was actually for self-protection. Even now, if it wasn't for the aggressive coercion of Bokaze and Watergate in his home, Nangongja might not have been able to make the blood-robed pavilion join the 4th Shinobi World War as a third-party force. Then I'll go arrange the relevant matters first. After walking to Nangongja's side, Mashiro slowly said goodbye to Nangongzhe and left Nangongzhe's room. Mobilizing the power of the entire blood-robed pavilion wasn't something that could be done with just a few words. Mashiro might be busy for a while now, right? Watching Mashiro walk out of his room, Nangongzhe slowly raised his hands. The warmth of Mashiro's embrace just now seemed to still be a little bit left at this moment. A gentle smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and Nangongzhe's eyes became more and more firm. This kind of warmth, I will never allow it to disappear. Humph. Since all of you are so greedy for the power of the Blood Cloak Pavilion and the power that I possess, then I will let all of you have a good look at how powerful the power that all of you desire is, and how terrifying a true Yama is. I didn't want to compete with the world, but the world insisted on making me fall into the mortal world. Since that's the case, I will raise my sword, sing for me, and let the world taste the sharpness of the sword in my hand. Picking up the Heaven's Disaster sword beside him, Nangongzhe slowly walked into the secret room of his home. With a flash of light, Nangongzhe had already walked into the space passage leading to the Lion Clan space. Chapter 545. There was no sun in the Lion Clan space itself, but there was a change between day and night, which was very magical. Even Li Yang, who guarded the space, didn't understand the mystery. But the change between day and night was not so important for a person. Sasuke slowly touched his eyes covered with white gauze with his hand, and a wry smile flashed on his mouth. It turned out that my brother relied on such a pair of eyes to face all kinds of difficulties and uses from Akatsuki and Woodleaf alone? That's right, although Sasuke has Manjikyu Sharingan, it's only Manjikyu and not Eternal Manjikyu, so Sasuke actually suffers from serious vision decline and complications caused by a large lack of eye power like Itachi before. After obtaining Manjikyu Sharingan, although Sasuke also deliberately wanted to save his eye power, but in order to master Manjikyu Sharingan as soon as possible, Sasuke's eyes also bear tremendous pressure. And at the 5 Kages tournament, because of some instigation by Hoodlum, that is, Uchiha Obito, Sasuke couldn't control his emotions for a while, and directly appeared at the 5 Kages tournament, and launched an attack on Shimura Danzo, who was disguised as Mifune, the leader of the Land of Iron Samurai. He used Amaterasu again and again, used Katan, Kagutsuchi again, and several times when his Manjikyu Sharingan was overwhelmed, he forcibly used Susanoo. Such a high-intensity, short-term use of his Manjikyu Dojutsu naturally made Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan deteriorate rapidly. By now, Sasuke's eyes could only see some vague light, and in order to prevent Sasuke's eyes from being stimulated more, Sasuke's mother Uchiha Mikoto also made some ointment based on some prescriptions passed down from the Uchiha clan that were said to alleviate the lack of eye power, and covered Sasuke's eyes with a layer of white gauze. But although his eyes have become almost blind, Sasuke's perception is still sharp. Sasuke slowly stood up from his Sasuke's small chair. Even without using his eyes, Sasuke still walked to the gate of his courtyard with his 5 senses and slowly opened the gate. Nangong Laosher, why did you suddenly come? Sasuke said to Nangongzhe. His voice was a little tired, but it was also deliberately free and easy. Nangongzhe looked at Sasuke, whose eyes were wrapped in white gauze, standing in front of him. He didn't react for a while. After all, when he sent Sasuke to the Lion Clan's different space, Sasuke was still sleeping. Nangongzhe didn't know much about the condition of Sasuke's eyes. But for the drawbacks of Manjikyu Sharingan, Nangongzhe still knew a little about it. After all, he had a lot of cooperation with Itachi before. Hearing that Nangongzhe didn't talk to him for a long time, Sasuke didn't get tired of it. Instead, he seemed very enthusiastic to Nangongzhe and said, Nangong Laosher, why don't you come in and sit for a while? Standing at the door like this, if others see you, they will say that our Uchiha family doesn't know etiquette. Maybe because of the change in mentality, Sasuke actually said something to Nangongzhe. After all, in the Lion Clan's different space, except for the Uchiha family and Nangong family, there are no other human beings. Hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja's slightly heavy mood also became slightly lighter. Finally, after a long sigh, Nangongja said to Sasuke, "Sasuke, I need your help." For a long time, between the relationship between Sasuke and Nangongja, Sasuke was actually the one who was helped by Nangongja. He began to learn Kenjutsu under the guidance of Nangongja since he was a child, and with the approval of Nangongja, he left Woodleaf Village and joined Orochimaru. After joining Orochimaru, he kept in touch with Nangongja. After killing Orochimaru, he met his brother with the help of Nangongja. For Sasuke, Nangongja was actually a very important person. Even when he was young, Nangongja's role replaced Fugaku's father position in Sasuke's heart. After hearing Nangongja's request for help, Sasuke nodded to Nangongja without hesitation, and then said, "Nangong-sensei, you don't have to do this. As long as I can do it, I will naturally help you without hesitation." After hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja's expression didn't relax, but became more and more unnatural, because Nangongja knew how difficult it was for Sasuke to accept his request at this moment. "I need your help. I need you, who has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan beyond Manjikyu Sharingan, to help me." With the relationship between the two, almost when Sasuke learned that there was the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan above Manjikyu Sharingan, Nangongja also knew such a thing. With the power beyond Manjikyu Sharingan and the power of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, the energy contained in such a pair of eyes is beyond imagination. And if Blood Cloak Pavilion is enough to pry open the joint layout of the 5 major ninja villages and Akatsuki to produce the 4th Shinobi World War, such a pair of eyes beyond common sense is very important. After all, Akatsuki still has the existence of Manjikyu Sharingan, and only Sharingan is the best way to fight against Sharingan. As long as Sasuke can have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, then Sasuke will be a trump card in his hand, an important means to win. But to evolve his Manjikyu Sharingan into the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he needs to transplant the Manjikyu Sharingan of his immediate family into his own eyes. Now it is known that the only person who has Manjikyu Sharingan and has a direct relationship with Sasuke is the dead Itachi Uchiha. To disturb Itachi's peace after his death, transplant Itachi's eyes into his own eyes, and then help Nangongja? No matter which choice he chooses, it will be a torment for Sasuke. After all, for Sasuke, Itachi and Nangongja are very important people to him. Now such a choice is to put Itachi and Nangongja on the scale, and let Sasuke weigh the weight of the two people. Such a thing is very difficult for Sasuke, and he is unwilling to accept it. Chapter 546. At this moment, Sasuke fell into a tangled mood as expected. Although his eyes were wrapped in white gauze, making it impossible to see the struggle in Sasuke's eyes, Sasuke's slightly frowned eyebrows exposed from the white gauze were enough for Nangongja to see the tangled feelings in Sasuke's heart at this moment. In fact, Nangongja couldn't bear to make such a move that was close to forcing Sasuke. But if he wanted to realize his plan, the power of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was indispensable. "Sasuke, I don't want you to think that I'm forcing you to make a choice between me and your brother. I know how deep the relationship between you and Itachi is. Although Itachi has left the world now, I also know that it's hard for you to accept taking out Itachi's eyes and transplanting them into your own eyes." In the end, Nangongja still didn't want to force Sasuke to make such a cruel choice. Nangongja's words were indeed from his own heart, and there was no other meaning. But when Sasuke heard it, Sasuke felt even more pressure. "Nangong-sensei." Finally, after a long silence, Sasuke spoke to Nangongja. After hearing Sasuke's silent tone, Nangongja knew that he might have to find another way to let Blood Cloak Pavilion have the qualifications to enter the battlefield. After experiencing an inner struggle, Sasuke finally made a decision. Although Nangongja was also full of kindness to him, if he wanted to repay Nangongja, he would have to disturb the peace of Itachi Uchiha's body. Sasuke really didn't want to do such a thing. So Sasuke's words at this moment were actually to refuse Nangongja. But when Sasuke's words were not finished, a person slowly walked behind Sasuke. He had a square face with sharp edges and corners. His black hair was not long and was about to reach his cheekbones. But at this moment, because of the pressure of losing the Uchiha clan's patriarch and the long-term dull life in the Lion clan's different space, he looked a lot gentler. This person was the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, the captain of the Woodleaf police force, Itachi Uchiha, and Uchiha Sasuke's father, Uchiha Fugaku. Uchiha Fugaku slowly walked to Sasuke's side and put his hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Although Sasuke didn't stay with Uchiha Fugaku most of the time over the years, as a child, Uchiha Sasuke was still very much in awe of his father. When Fugaku's hand pressed on Sasuke's shoulder, Sasuke had a rare feeling of peace in his heart. His body, which had become slightly trembling because of guilt and torment because he wanted to refuse Nangongja's request, calmed down under Fugaku's hand. Patriarch Fugaku. Seeing Fugaku walking to his side, Nangongja didn't lose his manners and greeted Fugaku with the attitude of a junior. After hearing Nangongja's words, Fugaku's face showed an indifferent smile that was very inconsistent with his former iron-blooded style. After waving his hand, he said to Nangongja, "Nangong-sama, you don't have to be like this. Now, the real Uchiha clan is only left with us and Yuri Koyuri. So, there's no need to mention the title of Patriarch anymore. Although my surname is Uchiha, I exist in this world as a husband and a father named Fugaku." Fugaku was also a person who had experienced ups and downs. Fugaku was once the patriarch of the Woodleaf clan. The power in his hands was not monstrous, but it was not much different. After experiencing the failure of the coup and the massacre of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku finally saw through the world. At this moment, his state of mind was obviously at a level that ordinary people couldn't reach. Mr. Fugaku is really a magnanimous person. For Uchiha Fugaku's current mentality, Nangongja was actually very admirable. After all, a person who could bear the pain of failure and endure the loneliness in the Lion clan's different space was worthy of admiration. I also heard a little of what you two said just now. It seems that Nangong-sama really needs Sasuke to use Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to assist you? Fugaku didn't make any pretentious gestures and seemed very frank to Nangongja and Sasuke. Although he said that he heard a little, Fugaku also heard almost all of what Sasuke and Nangongja just said. After hearing Fugaku's words, Sasuke's body trembled. Because at this moment, Sasuke didn't know what his father was planning to do at this moment. What if his father directly rejected Nangongja on behalf of him? What if his father agreed to Nangongja's request and let him transplant his brother's eyes? No matter what choice Fugaku made, Sasuke didn't think it was a good choice. After all, compared to himself, if Fugaku rejected Nangongja's proposal so straightforwardly, Sasuke really didn't know whether Nangongja would be angry with Fugaku because of such a thing. And if his father forced him to transplant Itachi's eyes, Sasuke's heart was very unwilling to accept it. Although with Nangongja's character, he wouldn't necessarily turn hostile because of Fugaku's rejection, but when it came to his family, presumably, few people could maintain their calm. But to Sasuke's surprise, his father, the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Fugaku, directly used his own actions to provide a second path for Sasuke and Nangongja. Uchiha Fugaku looked at Sasuke and Nangongja with a smile on his mouth and slowly said to Sasuke and Nangongja, "You two should take a look at this." While speaking, Fugaku's eyes also appeared in the representative Sharingan of the Uchiha clan, and this pair of eyes was the peak of the normal Sharingan, 3-Tomo Sharingan. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, it was not surprising to have such a pair of eyes. After all, in the world of ninja, strategy and vision may be very important, but to become the patriarch of a powerful clan like the Uchiha clan, you also need to be powerful beyond most people. Chapter 547. Just when Sasuke and Nangongja couldn't figure out what Fugaku was going to do at this moment, the three tomo in Fugaku's eyes quickly rotated under the influence of chakra. The three tomo were rotating at a very high speed. Generally speaking, it was because the eyes were operating to the extreme. But in the same way, there was another situation that would make the three tomo rotate quickly. Manjikyu Sharingan's awakening. Although Nangongja and Sasuke weren't sure, a crazy idea was born in their hearts. The well-known three tomo Sharingan of the Uchiha clan wasn't the end of the Sharingan's evolution path. Although this news wasn't known to everyone, as the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, how could Uchiha Fugaku not know? After decades of development in the Woodleaf clan, even if the Uchiha clan didn't have any talented and powerful geniuses, there would always be people who had such a transcendental Manjikyu Sharingan under the combination of time and place. Uchiha Fugaku, as the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, naturally should know about the records of Manjikyu Sharingan. And according to the character of Uchiha Fugaku when he was the clan leader of the Uchiha clan, since he knew the potential of Manjikyu Sharingan, even if he had to pay a high price, he would definitely master such a power in his own hands. In the bloody pupils, the three tomo were constantly rotating, and gradually there was a phenomenon of adhesion. 4 points and a slightly slender triangular pinwheel appeared in Fugaku's eyes. One of the 4 points was located in the center of the pupil, and the other 3 points were located at the place where the three tomo were before. Although it was a little cumbersome, the characteristics of Manjikyu Sharingan were undoubtedly revealed. Yes, this was Uchiha Fugaku's Manjikyu Sharingan, 4 points pinwheel Sharingan. Seeing the Manjikyu Sharingan in his father's eyes, Sasuke's eyes suddenly became round. His father was actually hiding such a powerful force? The more one has a Manjikyu Sharingan, the more one knows how terrifying it is. But why didn't his father show his strength to fight against Konoha when the Uchiha clan was destroyed? Why didn't his father show his strength to fight against Konoha's ninja village? Even if he couldn't, he could at least let the Uchiha clan survive. Such doubts appeared in Sasuke's mind, but Sasuke knew that his father would not say these words to him. After all, Uchiha Fugaku is no longer the ambitious man before, but a hermit who enjoys a plain life. Fugaku doesn't want such a dark past to leave a shadow in Sasuke's heart. I know that head Nangong came to the Lion clan's different space to find Sasuke, and even made such a request that would obviously put Sasuke in a dilemma. It's not for any personal purpose. As the former leader of the Uchiha clan, I have a good eye for people. There must be something that forced head Nangong to come here to seek power beyond Manjikyu Sharingan. Looking at Nangongja and Sasuke standing beside him, Fugaku's eyes flashed with a wisp of wisdom. As Fugaku himself said, during his time as the leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku has actually seen all kinds of people and is quite experienced in judging people. Nangongja is not a person obsessed with power and status, this is very obvious. But at this moment, Nangongja violated his own principles and came to the Lion clan's different space to make such a request to Sasuke. Obviously, he has been forced to the point of no choice. Sasuke is too kind, just like his brother. Fugaku looked at Sasuke with his eyes, and in a trance, he seemed to see Itachi Uchiha's figure appear beside Sasuke. When Itachi was forced by the group of people in Woodleaf village to slaughter his family, the expression on his face was the same as Sasuke's now. His heart was full of entanglement and a bit overwhelmed. Fugaku has seen such an expression once, and when he saw it last time, he secretly vowed in his heart that he would not let his family have such an expression on their faces again. Since you need a pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and Sasuke doesn't want to use his brother's eyes, it's better to use my eyes. Anyway, I have been living in the Lion clan's different space, and it's useless for this pair of eyes to follow me. It's better to let them follow Sasuke. It can solve the dilemma Sasuke is facing at the moment, and at the same time, it can let head Nangong not be embarrassed by the dilemma in front of you. Isn't it killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Fugaku wants to give his eyes to Sasuke? Such a move was not expected by Sasuke and Nangongja at the same time. However, when Nangongja thought about it carefully, he realized that what Fugaku said actually had a certain degree of feasibility. But at this moment, Nangongja was unwilling to force Sasuke too much. After all, although he didn't have to put himself and Itachi on the scale, Sasuke needed to make a choice between his father and Itachi at the moment. Perhaps from Fugaku's point of view, such a solution is a good way, but can Sasuke really accept such a solution? Nangongja didn't know, and Sasuke didn't know at the moment. Because the moment Fugaku proposed to contribute his Manjikyu Sharingan, Sasuke's heart was already in a mess. His father, who has always valued interests more than his family in his eyes, has always maintained a cold-blooded face. At this moment, because of his difficulties, he wants to contribute his precious eyes? Sasuke's heart was already in a mess at the moment, and he couldn't make any judgment. Fugaku obviously also saw Sasuke's dilemma at the moment. Perhaps Sasuke couldn't see everything clearly because of his inexperience, but Fugaku, as the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, is naturally better than Sasuke in judging the situation and identifying the general situation. Although his family is temporarily living in the Lion clan's different space, in fact, it can be said that they are completely under the protection of Nangongja. Imagine that without the support of the entire Uchiha clan, once Uchiha Fugaku's family and Yuri Koyuri set foot in the ninja world, they will be attacked by many people who covet the Sharingan. Although Nangongja may not necessarily do such a thing, Fugaku had to put his vision further and think in the most dangerous direction. Chapter 548. Sasuke's hesitation was naturally seen by Fugaku. So after showing a slightly apologetic look to Nangongja, Fugaku pulled Sasuke's arm and pulled him aside. Although Nangongja believed that he could clearly hear the conversation between the Uchiha father and son by injecting his internal force into his ears, Nangongja did not do so, because such a conversation was not what Nangongja wanted to hear. So Nangongja just used his own eyes to watch Fugaku standing opposite Sasuke. Fugaku's mouth kept opening and closing, and the expression in his eyes kept changing. After more than 10 minutes of persuasion, Sasuke finally nodded to Fugaku with difficulty. He held Sasuke's hand, just like when Sasuke taught him to walk step by step when he was a child. Nangong-sama, we have already agreed. My eyes will be handed over to Sasuke from now on. You can bring a doctor who can perform eye transplant to the Lion clan's different space at any time, or inform us to go to the Blood Cloak Pavilion headquarters for eye transplant surgery. Fugaku cupped his hands at Nangongja and said respectfully. Nangongja looked at Fugaku standing opposite him and Sasuke, whose eyes were wrapped in white gauze. For a moment, his heart was filled with guilt. Nangongja always felt that what he was doing now was really not in line with his principles. Forcing the Uchiha father and son like this was very difficult for Nangongja to accept. With complicated emotions, Nangongja took a deep look at Fugaku and Sasuke, then nodded and said to Fugaku and Sasuke, "This time, I am indeed a bit abrupt. Because of my own personal reasons, you have to suffer such a choice." For enemies, Nangongja naturally did not hesitate to use iron-blooded means, but for people like Sasuke, who had a good relationship with him, Nangongja still found it difficult to be ruthless. Nangong-sama, you don't have to be so concerned. There are many things in this world that we can't control. There are many things that we can't do just because we want to. I can understand your difficulties. Fugaku was different from Sasuke. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku had done many things that went against his conscience out of helplessness. Now Nangongja was already a gentle person. If other people were in Nangongja's position, they would definitely be more ruthless than Nangongja, and not feel guilty like Nangongja was now. In that case, I'll take my leave. When I finish all the arrangements in the blood-robed pavilion, I will send someone to perform the eye transplant surgery for both of you. At this moment, Nangongja didn't know why he only wanted to leave Sasuke and Fugaku. At this moment, although Sasuke and Fugaku didn't say anything harsh, for Nangongja, their eyes were like sharp knives constantly stabbing into Nangongja's heart. This was the first time he did something against his conscience, and this feeling didn't make Nangongja feel comfortable. Nangongja left the Lion Clan space as if he was running away, while Sasuke and Fugaku stood in the courtyard of their home, silent for a long time. In the end, they could only end this situation after Fugaku sighed. At this moment, not only Nangongja and Uchiha's father and son were suffering, but a similar scene also appeared in Woodleaf Village. Because the Fourth Shinobi World War was about to break out, Watergate has been working hard to improve the strength of Woodleaf Village during this period of time, looking forward to making Woodleaf Village stand out in the coming battle and seize more benefits. At this moment, it was already late at night, even the streetlights on Woodleaf Street were extinguished because of the late night. She took out her keys and gently opened the door of her house. She tiptoed and took off her shoes. Then, she slowly hung her coat on the hanger. For some reason, a feeling of fatigue suddenly hit Watergate's heart. During this period of time, because of the Fourth Shinobi World War, Watergate almost returned to his home in the middle of the night. Although when he was in the Hokage's office, he dealt with all kinds of decisions that could affect the life and death of thousands of people, that feeling made Watergate very addicted. But when he returned home alone, when all the halos on his body faded away, the emptiness in Watergate's heart emerged uncontrollably. Is everything I'm doing right now right or wrong? Watergate didn't know what the answer was, because he was already riding a tiger and couldn't get off. Woodleaf, the war machine, was already operating because of the news of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Once the war machine Woodleaf was started, it would only stop after obtaining enough benefits. Sigh, Minato let out a long sigh and walked to his kitchen with an indescribable feeling. He opened the refrigerator door and took out a bottle of cold oolong tea. He took a few sips of the cold oolong tea and poured it into his mouth. Oyaji, can I talk to you about something? Just when Watergate's expression was still in a trance, suddenly the voice of his son Naruto suddenly appeared behind him. Did he completely let down his guard when he was at home? What was the reason for this? Was it because of physical exhaustion or mental exhaustion? Having no time to think about such a question, Watergate put down the oolong tea in his hand, trying to make his expression more gentle, and said to Naruto. It's already so late, but you haven't slept yet. It seems that you have been preparing to tell me what you are going to say for a long time. Since you have hesitated for so long and finally mustered up the courage to say it to me, then don't be so shy, just say it directly. My family's Naruto's ninja, isn't it straightforward? Looking at Naruto, Watergate gently pulled Naruto's hand, and took Naruto to the living room. He turned on a small night light that was not so bright. Watergate and Naruto's faces became much softer under the slightly orange light. Watergate sat quietly on the sofa, carefully looking at his son. Time really flies. When he first met Naruto, although Naruto didn't like him, he always looked so bright and positive. But as he grew older, although Naruto was still so bright, his eyebrows unconsciously became a bit heavier. Is this the price of growing up? Chapter 549. Finally, after struggling for a while, Naruto gritted his teeth and opened his eyes as if he had made a decision. He said to Minato, who was sitting opposite to him, I'm not going to give you a chance to fight me. Oyaji, I don't know if you still remember the scene when Pain's Rikudo attacked Woodleaf Village? When he heard Naruto suddenly talking about Pain's attack on Woodleaf Village, Watergate's expression suddenly became serious. For Watergate, although defeating Pain was very important, such a battle that caused heavy losses to Woodleaf Village was also a very disgraceful mark on Watergate's resume as Hokage. Watergate, who has always been the best Hokage in history as his goal, was actually very unwilling to accept such a disgraceful mark. But at this moment, Naruto was obviously immersed in his own emotions. He didn't notice what kind of expression Watergate had on his face. Although I know that I am not the most powerful person, I still think that I have some ability to protect myself. Indeed, although Naruto at the moment is not the strongest in Woodleaf Village, but Naruto is also comparable to an ordinary Jonin without using the power of Nine Tails mode. And once the power of Nine Tails sealed in his body is activated, then Naruto's combat power will definitely soar rapidly. But even so, when Naruto recalled the disastrous scene when Pain attacked Woodleaf Village, Naruto's heart was full of powerlessness. Even if he fully released the power of Nine Tails that he can stimulate, and even if he desperately stimulated all the power of Nine Tails, he doesn't seem to have the power to protect himself. As a ninja, he has a different kind of worship for power. When Naruto realized his weakness, the feeling of suffering in his heart was completely imaginable. When his mother took his hand and took him to the Shikatsu forest, when he passed by the ruins, he heard the sad and desperate cries of his neighbors, but he almost left without hesitation. Such a thing was something that Naruto thought he would never do, but such a thing was still done by himself. Because of the powerlessness, because of the guilt of ignoring the lives of others. I want to become stronger, I want to have the power to carry out my own ninja path. I want to be a person who protects others, not a person who is protected by others. What I want to be a warrior who can stand proudly on the battlefield, not a powerless person who is waiting for others to save him. Naruto's voice became more and more passionate, he even seemed to have forgotten that it was already late at night, and his mother had already stepped into the land of dreams. Now Naruto didn't want to care about anything, because Naruto had been tortured by his own emotions for a long time. Under the guidance of Watergate, Naruto was finally able to express all the emotions in his heart. This feeling made Naruto no longer want to think about anything meaningless. Looking at the child in front of him, who had already revealed some of Kyuubi's aura, and looking at the young man who was clenching his fist and hoping that he could become stronger, Minato's thoughts involuntarily returned to the time when he was also a young man. Was he like Naruto back then, tortured by the feeling of powerlessness that surged in his heart? Was he also affected by the same emotions at that time, and then tried all kinds of methods to make himself stronger without hesitation? But now, he was addicted to the desire for power and couldn't extricate himself for a long time. Initially, he simply wanted to expel the helplessness in his heart to grow stronger. However, he didn't know when it started to slowly decline. Naruto, looking at his own child, Minato said slowly, "Don't worry. We're not gods. We can't make everything go according to what we want. In many cases, the lack of manpower is the biggest obstacle that stands in our way. However, such an obstacle isn't something that can be overcome with willpower alone." Watergate's tone was full of heaviness, because what Watergate said now was the conclusion that Watergate came to during his continuous growth. After hearing Watergate's words, Naruto's eyes also became a little dim. Although Naruto wanted to refute, he couldn't find a reason to convince himself and Watergate. But seeing Naruto's dim eyes, Watergate suddenly changed the thread of discussion, and the heavy atmosphere was suddenly broken by Watergate. Even if there is a lack of manpower, so what? We have been training ourselves step by step from being weak to become strong. It's a good thing to be able to recognize your own weakness, because it's precisely because you can see your own weakness. Only by facing our own weakness can we have the opportunity to continue to grow. Hearing Watergate's words, Naruto's eyes finally lit up. Watergate was right. No one was born to be strong. All the strong gradually became strong step by step from being weak. Since I'm not strong enough now, I shouldn't run away, but face my own weakness. Yes, I'm weak. But I won't always be weak, because I'll do my best to make myself strong. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm very pleased that you can say such words to me. I've already seen your will. As your father, I can't just abandon you like this. I'll do my best to make you stronger. Sure enough, it's time to consider the suggestion made by the 4th Raikage AI during the 5 Kage tournament. In fact, it took time for a person to become strong. But as the goal of Akatsuki in the 4th Shinobi World War, Watergate hopes that Naruto can also have a certain degree of self-protection. And the means to make Naruto strong quickly has been hidden in Naruto's body. The head of the 9 tails, the strongest demon fox, 9 tails. If Naruto can fully master the power of the 9 tails in his body, then naturally it can make Naruto's strength advance by leaps and bounds. Just like the Hachibi column force of the Cloud Village, although his powerful lightning taijutsu is very eye-catching, but what really makes him a strong person is that he can perfectly control the power of the Hachibi in his body. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.